Okay, it's episode 46 of Summoning Insights. And, we start the episode out here. I don't know why. The sky at the moment in England's blue. I hear birds chirping. The sun kind of just warms me. It's not too warm. It's not too breezy, but it's just warms me to remind me that light is out there. The sun is there to warm me up. I was just thinking what a great day it's been recently. I was thinking back through the great times that we get to live through in the human civilization, like actually thinking of some of the important dates in history that really mean something to me and like kind of sparked up a new era, golden age, if you will. So on the 29th of May, Monty, in 1453, the fall of Constantinople took place. And even though it was the fall of a great place, in many ways it's believed actually that this led to Greek scholars and texts being introduced to Italy, which actually then sparked the Renaissance period, which is an excellent period of the Enlightenment, of human values becoming more appreciated and becoming universally accepted, and art, literature, everything was sparking off. So this terrible event actually became something beautiful, and then we skip forwards in time. You go to June 21st of 1788, the ratification of the United States of America's Constitution, instituting again rights for men. The ordinary person could dare to dream of a life of happiness and a wholesome future beyond tyrants and this dark age of tyranny that had existed beforehand. Then we keep going forwards to more modern days. June 5th, 1989, the tank man showed us all in the Tiananmen Square protests, Monty, that one man can stand against even a machine seemingly designed to conquer and destroy. He can show the world that no, you can stand up for what's right. The little guy can win even in that moment, And then we go forwards again, November 9th, 1989, the Berlin Wall falls, Monty. That oppression is over. Finally, people will live in harmony. Europe will be united. And then we come to now. We come to the 8th of May, 2015. A lot of you were thinking, what happened on the 8th of May? I mean, MSI wasn't over by then. That was last week. So 8th of May, 2015. The glorious EDG complete TSM's 1-4 record in the group stage, eliminating them in the group stage, ensuring a semi-finals in which North America will not be represented by a smog organisation which through evil acts has somehow accrued titles, land, fiefdom. But this didn't happen. They fell on that day, Monty. It was sort of the last day when people could actually from their heart feel like there was something good in the world and things were possible. I've always wanted to ask this question of you, Monty. Why don't bad things happen to good people? In this particular sense, finally good things happen to bad people. This is the way it was supposed to be. So how are you doing, Monty? I imagine not quite as epic a thought as I had there, but I just wanted to share, what I was feeling inside.
Yes, I conclude with your. I agree. I concur with your sentiments about the magnificence of this feeling that you're having right now, that truly perhaps we're in another epoch of history right now.
Anything's possible now, anything. I mean, listen, you can't spell euphoria without EU, so also euphoria has a 4 in it, and that represents the 4 losses of TSM. So yeah, anyway, there's the etymology there for you. I'm breaking down words for you now, guys, as well as history, and So our guest this week,
euphoria was actually the word invented by a time traveler for this exact situation. So the etymology is actually circular in terms of its meaning, because it was actually given to the Greeks many thousands of years ago by a time traveler from our realm.
See, I actually time traveled myself, Monty. I didn't want to reveal this now, but I actually went back in time because what happened is I got to the period of time when TSM had Amazing, this great jungler who was a wonderful player with a very wide champion pool, and I saw that they actually, took the most amount of games off Samsung White, and I saw that they probably should have been in the final and been the second best team at Worlds, and I was threatened by this because my natural dislike of TSM, and I secretly don't want them to succeed, because for some weird reason, that's the only team in the world that I don't have a reasonable opinion on. So I thought that, and I was scared. I was like, oh my God, if they go into another season with this guy and that amazing coach Lord Lokodoko and Lost Boy and Bjerg, oh my God, and Bjergsen, they'll probably just win Worlds next. Like, and I saw that, I heard that Samsung White was going to break up, so I was like, oh shit, I've got to do something, because otherwise TSM's probably going to win Worlds next. So what I did was, I traveled forwards in time and I tried to see like what would happen in the next few months. And I saw the way it would unfold. Like, you know, eventually they'd be capable of winning an IEM because of the breakup and the Korean exodus. Then I saw what would happen with the rise of China, and like, okay, now it's going to be like a real mix. Now TSM can win every event potentially, especially Worlds. So what I did is I traveled back in time, back to that period right after Worlds, and I found this like young challenger player who his career was going nowhere. His name was Santorin, and I said to him like, listen, we're going to get you into TSM. He's like, how could you possibly do that? Like, I'm nobody. I've never done anything in my career. And I was like, listen, you're Danish. You haven't accomplished anything yet. You've been in relegations. You're exactly who they'll come for. And I know this because I traveled back from the future, okay? And to prove it, I will now explain to you what we're going to do once you get into TSM. And he's like, okay, I'm all ears. Like, I'm not a very good player right now. I don't have a lot of experience. Like, what do I do? And I was like, listen, I've got to I handed him like a big folder, and I was like, this is all the info you need. Here's all the teams you'll play and what picks they like to choose. Here's where their pathing will be in games. So listen, I know you're not a very strong player, you're not a very good player, but all you have to do as your jungler is just look at the pathing, just avoid where the enemy jungler is. Just know when he's going to turn up at this area. All you have to do is turn up and support this really good mid laner, and listen, they'll think you're a really good jungler. Look like you're like Bengi from the SKT era, you know, you're just always in the right place at the right time. People will, as a result, naturally overvalue your ability, you know. And he's like, okay, but won't that ever be exposed? Won't it ever fail at any point in time? I'm like, no, just stick with the binder. Just keep going with the binder. So he kept going. And at first he was worried, you know, because he went to that first IEM, and actually Unicorns of Love was so crazy they didn't even do what I'd originally seen in the future. It turns out they actually have no plan. They just decide in the moment. So when he behaved differently, they did totally different stuff, and it didn't work for him. So he actually bombed this tournament completely. And I was like, listen, stick with the course. I promise you it will work. So the season came. As the season went, he learned how to use the binder, how to look at the pathing, how to just go and be in the right place, never to do anything special, just to be in the right place with the right champion. He learned how to do this, Monty, and eventually TSM won IEM, they won the NALCS, and he came into the MSI, and then he got to like the last sort of section of the chapter, and then it said there like MSI, and as he on the day before MSI final start, as was his tradition, he opened up the binder and he went to turn the page, and there was nothing there, and he kept turning pages. He was turning frantically, and there was just nothing there, and at the very end it just said in letters in this sort of a crimson kind of coloured ink, it just said TSM will fall. And then he was like, what does it mean though? What does it mean? And then it just said, play it your own way. And then this is what happened, Monty. See, it was all my plan. I took this to the next level. It was so in-depth, so intricate, the way I caused this downfall. And then I just sat back and I just enjoyed. And it turned out all Danish people just crumble under such pressure. So that was just my little anecdote there about one time that I used time travel for good. Sort of like Quantum Leap, you know. I had to go back and right a wrong that had happened in history. So I guess that would make Monty like Ziggy or whoever that guy was called in that show. So anyway, this is quite a delayed one, but we're going to get to our guest now, Monty, who's been sat here for 8 minutes listening to all this shit. So our guest, speaking of mid laners from NA who had a hard time but are hoping to improve things in the future. We've got Prolly here. He used to play for Complexity. He also beat Cloud9 in a game. You remember that? You remember that one, Prolly?
Easy. We beat him twice, baby. Twice.
Yep.
Right?
And then you had that amazing game against Curse, which in many ways is probably the greatest game of League of Legends ever played.
Strategic diversity at the greatest. Orianna versus Ziggs.
But
Who can last longer?
Now you are the coach of H2K, who finished third in the split this time. Actually took the team Fnatic, who we just saw have a phenomenal MSI run, took them to 5 games. So how are things going for you in terms of the coaching at the moment, do you think?
Coaching's good, I guess. I don't know, man. It's really hard to like get better when you're not actually doing it. Like we have a break right now, and I'm watching MSI. And it's like all my opinions about MSI need to be either confirmed or crushed by my team. Like I need to get their opinions on what they think is right and wrong in this. Because mine are all like, you know, standalone observers and completely theoretical. So I really need to understand why certain things work. And right now my job as a coach is like kind of put on hold, and it's just building up information to kind of fix. So I've been on like a skill ceiling right now until I get to go back to Berlin, and then hopefully I'll explode everywhere.
Okay, so you meant it's hard to improve in terms of like when you haven't talked to your team yet, when you haven't started scrimming. I thought you just meant as a team, like it's coaching's very hard, because I'm sure Monty was kind of nodding on like yeah, it's really hard. Actually, usually you're at your best like the first 2 weeks into the season, then it's all downhill from there. You start off really strong, then eventually you peter out until nothing. Like Monty's coaching career was sort of like a Shushei in Fnatic. Like at the beginning, just one of the best. Absolutely, just knew everything he was doing. Towards the end, you were sort of like, why is he really here still? I don't know what's going on. And then in the end, the team had to cut one of their beloved faces of the team. So it's understandable. Okay.
That's right. I was the Shushei of coaching.
What an epitaph for your career, So there you go. So let's go into MSI then, because obviously the big topic was MSI here. So let's start out with the place we all know. Let's just get it out of the way, Monty. Let's start with TSM, because we're going to do the Western teams first. In terms of TSM, I don't know a single analyst, a single expert that didn't think, first of all, that TSM was the strongest Western team, and secondly, that they actually had a decent chance. I won't say a good chance. I think people went too far with some of that. But they had a decent chance of actually upsetting someone. Like maybe, hey, getting to a final. Maybe who knows, maybe they could play EDG, because it was very likely if they were second or third, it would be EDG and as TSM there. So it didn't matter if you were second or third. Technically, you'd play the same person in the semis. So there was a chance at least. Hey, maybe they can make the finals. Was this similar? This was like you.
I mean, I don't think, I never thought there was a chance of them making the finals. I did think that they would take third place and then get knocked out in the semis.
When do you mean there's no chance? I mean a chance, dude, like 20% chance or something, 30% chance.
I think even less than that, because the problem that TSM has is that if we compare them to SKT or to EDG, literally all of their players are worse than their counterparts on both of those teams. So that means that their chance of winning against either of those teams.
Wait a minute. You might say that. Like, you're saying that as if it's a given. Like, if most people, first of all, before you go to the obvious one that everyone would debate, I'm just going to go here, Monty. So most people in the West probably wouldn't agree with you if you said Mako is better than Lost Boy. I don't know if I even would. I think that one's a wash, or it might even go in Lost Boy's favour.
You could say the same thing about Wolf and Lost Boy, but that would be the only even debatable one.
Okay. But, well, you say debatable, Monty. You know, come on, man. You know the audience.
Reasonably debatable.
Bjergsen is better than Pawn. You know it, Monty. Come on.
No, he's not.
I will say this. Bjergsen has to have more of a carry role in his team than Pawn does in his.
That's true.
There's a little edge up for Bjergsen there. That's all you're going to get this show, Bjergsen. The rest of this show is going to be me stomping all over your face, much like all of those other mid laners did at this MSI. Anyway, though, we'll get to you later, Bjergsen. So, starting out here, let's just go through some of the players, okay? Because one of the things that I found kind of disappointing was that when people looked at the failure of this TSM team, everyone kept... Because people who are haters are too vicious in terms of how they attack people who failed, it means that people who naturally don't want to buy into that line of like saying every player is shit and they should all retire and be cut and all that, go too far the other way, and they're like, no, listen, you can't blame any player. Like, you can't say any player had an underperformance. You know, they lost as a team. Like, if the team part falls apart, then no one can do well. First of all, that's not true. Like, I've seen Faker in this tournament have great games when his team completely fell apart. I've seen players play well and some underperform when their team wins. That's not an analytical metric to be like, they have to... the responsibility gets evenly distributed. So let's start with the guy who always gets the blame in TSM, Monty, which is Dyrus. The part of the reason I've always said in history why Dyrus is simultaneously underrated and overrated is because the people who are haters of TSM from outside, and even some of the TSM fans, would always blame him for the losses. Like, oh, look, he always chokes, he tilts, he gets camped, he gets killed, he feeds in international tournaments. But the people who are fans of his then go way too far the other way. And they're like, listen, if you're talking about the greatest players ever, you go Flame, Shy, Dyrus, Reaperd. And I'm like, whoa. There's one of those shouldn't even be in this conversation, mate. Like, one of them just played long enough that eventually he got into that somehow. So, in terms of a middle ground, was there some problem with Dyrus's individual play in this tournament, Monty?
Absolutely. But it wasn't entirely his fault by any means, too. So what I see right now is that there's a lot of piling on Dyrus saying, oh, he died. I mean, he gave up first blood in, 4 out of their 5 games. And there have been consistent issues with Dyrus. In fact, he, during the NALCS spring season and playoffs, he gave up first blood 35% of the time when he played, which was the highest out of any single player in the league. And obviously that you'd be searching for about a 10% there would be normal, right? Because there are 10 players in the game. So the 35% is much, much higher than normal. And it's been a continuing issue. But do I think that it was entirely Dyrus' fault? No. Did Dyrus do things like not respect the jungler's location, seemingly not know where the jungler started and the jungler's likely pathing, and then push up the lane and get very easily ganked? Absolutely. But there's also other factors, such as if he needs to push the lane out in order to base, and Santorin isn't in the brush and top lane to back him up, so that he can actually get out of that situation. If he's not calling for the jungler, or Santorin's not coming up to help him, or there is no pressure on the top side of the map, then what is he supposed to do? So there are a couple different angles to this.
But he has had a... Yeah, okay, go on.
That's honestly an error that you find in scrims and fix. Like, finding those out, that you can't do those correctly on LAN is, like, super beyond, like mistakes. Like, maybe it is a case where in scrims they do it correctly. Like, this hasn't been a really big problem. I understand, like, even with my team, there's times where they just play they do an uncharacteristic call, or they do something like they take a dragon when they outscale, and it's like, you guys knew this, and they're like, yeah, we knew, we just fucked it up. So maybe that's the case. The other one is this, honestly, no one yelled at Dyrus and no one yelled at Santorin for this, because this is literally both of them fucking up together. Like, that's it. It's no one like, oh, split the blame. It's like, no, both of you guys fucked this up really badly, because the game's pretty much over when this happens. Sure, the enemy can throw, sure, you can make some epic team fight outplay, but really when you make these like strategical misplays where you're missing like 3 waves of XP in the first 5 minutes of the game, you shouldn't be able to come back from that. That should be a deficit that is impossible to climb out of. So getting to that point where it's like Dyrus isn't comfortable asking for the jungler, or Dyrus isn't sure what he needs to communicate, that should have been solved a long time ago. And at the same time, if Santorin's doing stuff, why is he not looking at top lane ever? Like, if you're playing with a Hecarim, give love to that fucking Hecarim. He can, like, solo carry if he has smite. Like, he can 1v5. So it's really, they just, weren't really aware of what they needed to do. And this honestly should have been something solved. And maybe it is and they just forgot it. But I don't know. I don't like putting it like, yeah, it's not the whole team's fault. Because really, Bjergsen shouldn't be able to shot call what happens top. And I don't think bot lane should really have a part in it. It really lies on Dyrus and Santorin, and both of them needed to be at a comfort level and a confidence level to where they know they need to be calling for help. Like, the best call right now is for you to come top Santorin, and Santorin needs to know this kind of thing.
Well, and Santorin has to be able to figure that out himself too. And part of the reason why I brought up the statistics, so when this started to happen, when we started to see this strategic breakdown at TSM, I asked the stat guys from Riot for the stats on Dyrus's first bloods. And the fact that it happens, 35% is an enormous number of first bloods in a game. And that's just on him. So he's 35% by himself. So I didn't check on TSM, but that almost certainly means that TSM is somewhere in the 60% plus range in terms of team first bloods right there, right? And one of the things, just to rewind to the NALCS playoffs, was when I was talking about my reasoning behind Impulse having an advantage over TSM, and why I thought that Impulse was going to be the team most likely to be able to beat TSM in the playoffs, I said this is a team that revolves around having very strong top jungle synergy, and I thought they'd be able to use Impact with champions like Hecarim or these big carry tops to snowball out of the top lane, because there is very little synergy between Dyrus and Santorin. And it didn't come true that time. But guess what? Oh boy, it came true at this tournament. And one of the things that why TSM, I think, didn't show this weakness previously and why they thought it was okay was because they have not played against good top laners in NA. There has been no team that has been able to exploit this. Part of the reason is because Rush decided to play Nunu during that series for whatever reason, and fell away from some more of the aggressive or scaling junglers or junglers that could have a big impact on the map. But who is TSM up against in NA in terms of top laners?
Well, I think
Who's
it's
actually good
it's not just like
compared
top
to
lane
Europe?
because
Compared to Europe, okay?
well,
Uni,
I don't think it's
Abashard?
purely based on that though, because like a lot of NA is still terrified of Bjergsen. So if I think NA copied the bans against TSM that was at MSI, then they could be dismantled pretty quickly. But teams would always give him like Lulu or Maokai or something like some really low econ top where it really didn't matter. He never really played that much
and he only
Hecarim for
played
Rumble.
3 champions. He never
Yeah.
played Hecarim up until MSI, and he never played Gnar up until MSI. He only played Lulu, Sion, and Maokai in the entirety of the NA playoffs. And that's why when we saw Fnatic come in and just ban those champions, and then
Yeah.
Huni is obviously having much more of an effect because Huni knows how to snowball, and Fnatic knows how to snowball out of top lane, that it became just a giant disaster for TSM.
By the way,
I still
Crowley,
think a lot of it lies on the mid lane. Like other mid laners outside of NA are comfortable against Bjergsen. Like EU, I know, and Korea, like they're like, oh, Bjergsen's good, but we can at least lane against him. I feel like NA is still terrified of Bjergsen, so they're gonna spin bans on that or do a pick ban process around the mid lane to get them an advantage. When really get the advantage top lane through pick and ban, and see what happens.
okay, we'll
part
get
of
to
it's
Bjergsen in
because-
a second.
Because NA doesn't have any. NA doesn't have any good mids outside of Bjergsen.
Like, I know before you probably wondered what that sound was, probably. Like, you'll have to forgive Monty. Like, he's doing stuff with OGN Plus now, and Koreans like to put, like, sound effects in, so that's why he just, like, introduced that little, like, go on. And we'll put that on a soundboard later, and anytime we need to rewind history, that section will play again, and a little sort of emote will appear on the screen, like, ding, as he does that, like, reverse sign. But, okay, so the question I want to ask about Dyrus, though, is... This is something that there's a historical precedent for this happening, though. Actually, Dyrus internationally has often had these problems. And what's funny is you'd think to yourself, right, what's the one tournament most recently where they had some success? Was this IEM tournament? Well, in the IEM tournament, you think who he played. First game, he played WE, so Aluka, who's hailed as like a terrible top laner out of China. Then he got to play Shy. Okay, he got to play Shy in the winners game, the CJ game. There's one good top lane he played. But then the semi-finals, he was playing Stake from Yowie Flashwolves. Okay, a decent player, but nothing to write home about.
Stake is terrible, dude. No, Stake is
He's
awful.
okay.
No,
and
he's
then you
not.
go to the
He's
final.
not
He played Scion only.
You go to the final, and it's 3 games of Aluka again. So basically, in this whole tournament, which they won, he only had 1 game against a good top laner.
Yep.
I mean, historically, it's been an issue. But my point would be, we already know it's going to be an issue. Therefore, why exacerbate it by giving him no help at all? Like, some of the arguments people had against this were ridiculous, Monty. Like, people saying stuff like, if Dyrus knows he's top playing by himself, why isn't he just buying wards all the time and warding? Yeah, because that's going to help even more. Just get even further behind in gold and be buying fucking wards every time you go back. Like, just buy 3 wards every time you go. What? What is that? That's not a thing.
And frankly, it doesn't matter if he sees it's coming because there's no help, so he's still going to die. I mean, if he's under the turret...
And or get zoned from like 2 or 3 ways of CS, which is equally as bad.
Like,
Right.
my theory on Santorin is that he's the typical solo queue jungler, Monty. Because you know at the high level of solo queue, they say what you do if you're a jungler is once you identify a lane as losing, you're like, well, that's abandoned, just cut that off. You go to the winning lane and you try and snowball that, So that's like how Santorin plays, except like this is actually your teammate. Like that guy actually like has to go home with you on the bus. That guy who you're just like basically Santorin's flying the last helicopter out of Vietnam and he's trying to swing that rope ladder so that Bjergsen can grab on, but Dyrus is like, please wait, help, I'm American, and he runs along, and then they're just like, they leave him, and then as they're flying away and he starts to get smaller, you just see this angry crowd of like Viet Cong come out of the bushes, surround him, and they're like, then Santorin just puts one finger up like, I'll never forget you, Dyrus, and your sacrifice for our country, and they just fly away, and Lord Loco's obviously the pilot here, just flying them away like,
Don't look back.
like,
Don't look
yeah,
back, boys.
exactly. He was a brave man. So, okay, what about this then? What about this issue that people obviously have brought up a lot, which is that, first of all, if you saw, someone ran the stats for all of Santorin's ganks, and his level of ganks was even down from even NALCS. This wasn't just that in NALCS he focused Bjergsen in the bot lane. Even compared to all of his ganks on the map, it was down something like 40% compared to opposing junglers, something ridiculous like that. So he was not only very rarely going top, But in general, on the map, he seemed to be a lot more ineffective. Like, do you have any theory for this, Monty? Because in theory, this shouldn't have been the issue because it's the tank meta. This we already discussed. This was actually a surprisingly weak international field of junglers. There wasn't a lot of strong junglers there, so you would have thought he wouldn't have had as many problems. What do you think?
I think that he's not used to his lanes losing this badly. And also, if we look at what happened in the NALCS playoffs, they were lane swapping. They lane swapped every game in the finals up against Cloud9. And in this tournament, they played a lot of 1v1 and 2v2 lanes. And the fact of the matter is that those lanes can't hold up. And when you have Bjergsen, they can't hold up against international competition. I mean, obviously, Wild Turtle does not have a very strong laning phase. Dyrus does not have a very strong laning phase. Bjergsen doesn't have an impactful laning phase, at the very least, when he's playing champions like Cho'Gath. There's not, I mean, or Ziggs. He's going to do well in his lane. Obviously, he's going to get some farm, but he's not going to be able to really have a tremendous amount of kill pressure. And I think that really hurt TSM. So Santorin just, instead of changing his game plan of we can't gank mid lane because we don't have as much kill pressure, so I'm going to gank another lane instead, he just did nothing. He farmed the entire game.
I think it's some kind of like stage fright thing because I saw it a lot at IEM. It was a little less, I guess, noticeable. To me, it was like a big red sore thumb that Santorin feels really, really uncomfortable at these kind of big lands. And it happened again here. And I know you're talking about like, oh, like they did 2v1s all the time and now it's a 1v1, 2v2 and he was playing weird. But even when they did 2v1, when he was playing Sejuani, I think, and they had Sion, he didn't even path correctly on Sejuani in that game. And it was, a 2v1 game. Like they didn't set up the dive and they didn't protect the dive. Like, whatever the Sheepy and Zyrene, I think, did like a nice little analysis of that too. Like it was a really blatant misplay. And it's like, that's the, 1v2 you're talking about they do all the time. It's like, I think he just mentally froze, got too scared or something on stage.
And not only that, but Lustboy was doing very badly in the lane swaps compared to NA2. He was sitting in lane a lot of the time when Wild Turtle was freezing under his turret. He was literally just sitting in lane, in top lane, doing nothing. Not going down, not recalling and walking with the jungler to protect the dive against Dyrus, just sitting in lane with no threat top, no reason to be there while his AD was freezing. It was it's hard to even describe this, and I think why Prolly and I we're a little scatterbrained in bringing all this up and keep bouncing from kind of one thing that they did wrong to the next, is TSM, they comprehensively shit the bed. It wasn't one player's fault. It's like everything was fucked up. Everything.
Because one of the things is when you talk about like the idea of like, okay, maybe Santorin felt a lot of pressure and he couldn't perform the way he even normally would, like doing things he normally does. Unfortunately, there's another trend I've noticed in esports where it happens in NA a lot, right? Where when an NA team fails, the players, because they don't want criticism, will say like, oh, like we had a lot of expectations on us and that put a lot of pressure on us. Like, if that's an issue to you, you're never going to be the best team in the world. Like, the best team in the world can't be like, we had the pressure of actually that people thought we were really good and that kind of like broke us and we mentally broke. Like, that, no great all-time great teams ever said that, If you're the greatest team or the best team or a very good team, you have the expectation because you're very good. Like, you're supposed to deliver on that at the tournament and show deservedly you are very good. Like, that's not a valid excuse. That's what someone should say if they were like, okay, I'll give you an example. Like, say the Copenhagen Wolves team in Europe this season, where on paper they didn't look like they were going to be a very good team, but okay, they managed to get to the playoffs, and then they went out in the was it in the first round or the second round they went
first
out?
Round.
First round. Okay, so they went out in the first. If they'd said to me, right, well, we didn't even think we were going to be that good a team, but we overperformed in the season, and then we had a lot of pressure on us, and we couldn't deliver. Okay, that's fine. You're not a top team. You maybe did do almost the best you could, and maybe you only could have done a bit better. But if you're supposed to be the best Western team, and this was your big chance to potentially win a major international tournament, we can't be using that excuse about pressure and fan expectation. Come on, man. There's no fan. Like, do you think Michael Jordan or someone ever failed a game and they were like, what do you think it was, Mike? And he was like, man, some of those fans out there really wanted me to win that game. And like, I feel like it got to me mentally. Like, these people have more pressure that they put on themselves to perform because they know they're really good. It doesn't matter what a fucking fan thinks. That's irrelevant. That shouldn't even be in your head at that point in time. Otherwise, why won't it happen in the future? You know, that'd be a concern for me if I found out that players actually in the team had some sort of anxiety issues there, because you can't just do that thing of like, oh, I hope it doesn't happen again. If that really exists, now you've got to work on it. Like, you probably do have to go take that guy to some sort of psychologist or have like massive team meetings on it. You have to fix something, because like you're saying, if one player had shit the bed and fell down here, we could just say, right, replace that player or use him in a different way. But when it's like systemic across the whole team, something massive has to be fixed here, right? What do you do?
Well, it's like, I know I'm not putting everything on him, but when there's cases where one player will be like super mentally out of it and it just like spreads. Because like, you know, everyone is used to this one player talking and now he's not. So everyone plays worse off of one player.
Listen, it's not always Link's fault. Oh, wait a minute. You just meant generally. Oh, my bad.
Shut the fuck up.
Sorry,
no, but,
sorry about that.
But yeah, so this whole like anxiety thing is, yeah, I really think Santorin has some kind of problem with this. And to me, it showed really hard at IEM. And I think that's where Loco should step in and have an honest conversation, because you can't watch IEM and go like, this was a really, really good like jungle performance. Like, compared to how he played in ALCS, he played great in ALCS. Like, he was ganking and killing shit. At IEM, he played like Pantheon and like AFK'd all game, and it's like,
just to semantically correct you there, Prolly. Like, you definitely can do that, because actually I saw a lot of people on Reddit did do that. What you mean is you shouldn't do that. You know, it's definitely possible within the physical universe to look at that tournament and go, TSM won. Santorin is the best jungler in the West. Ha ha ha. I'm pressing enter on this. It's going out like this, and then just put that onto Reddit as an opinion that gets upvoted. That definitely can happen. I've seen it happen, but I agree. You probably shouldn't have. And again, he didn't necessarily play amazing competition in that tournament at the position, you know.
Yeah, and what was the one before that?
IEM San Jose.
Yeah,
the tournament we don't speak about, remember, guys?
Yeah, that one, I think that was another, like, you know, Santorin really just felt super uncomfortable, and that's just, like, the biggest change in all of them. Like, yeah, maybe you could say, like, Les Boy didn't do this and this in 2v1s, but I don't know, I really felt like, yeah, Santorin felt a bit off, and then, yeah, Dyrus seemed to really be 1v5ing almost, because he's like top lane and he has no clue what's going to happen on the map.
Monty, when we talk about Bjergsen, obviously, since he's like a really good player in NA, and he's probably by far the best NA player. He's the best player in the NA region. There we go. We got semantically correct there, guys. We did it. Okay, he's the best player within the NA region currently, playing for an NA team. Because he's so much better than everyone at his position, like I said when I was setting up my storylines for this tournament, this is a tournament where actually he had a chance to like kind of get some legendary status. Like, if he goes up against Pawn, Faker, even EasyHoon, these guys, and really takes them down and does well, now he's got a chance to be considered one of the all-time great players, you know, because you have to add in that level of competition. You can't just only be beating up fucking Xiao Wei Zhao your whole career and then call yourself the best mid laner. It's not going to work. Wasn't this, aside from the team aspect, wasn't this one of the worst performances you've ever seen from Bjergsen?
I will say yes. The answer is yes. It was terrible. And a lot of people are saying, oh, man, he was up in CS in all his lanes, even against Faker, even against Pawn. Well, yeah, but Faker, while you played Ziggs, was Cassiopeia killing your entire team and roaming on the map while you just sat there and farmed.
Roll my eyes at that shit. Go rewatch that game. It was not like that. He He roamed like for like half of a second and got an XP disadvantage, and then Bjergsen took advantage of it. And then like after that, yeah, the lane went to shit. But pick and ban wise, Bjergsen was not set up to carry the game from lane.
I agree with that.
So there's
what was Bjergsen supposed to do, Polly? Just play safe and get to the late game?
I mean, that's what they made him do. When you play Ziggs, you're not looking for a mid laner who's gonna stomp. Like, sure, if you counterpick Ziggs with something, then maybe you can stomp lane. But really, you're picking Ziggs for, okay, say top and bot lose, Ziggs can stall. Say top and bot win, cool, now we can siege like fucking crazy. But the thing is like, no one was winning on the map, and Ziggs isn't going to do much other than like a 10-15 CS lead. So where's the carry?
It's a good matchup up against Cassiopeia. It's a good matchup against Cassiopeia, too, to prevent Cassiopeia from farming and getting too fed.
Yeah, well, that's where I gave him credit, because that
he
early
did well.
That's when Ziggs loses, early matchup against Cassio. And that's when he actually had that advantage, was early. So that's what I think was impressive, because it was Faker's Cassio, and that's where the matchup is bad. Later on, yeah, Ziggs is going to do great. But he did well early, which I thought was pretty impressive, at least on Ziggs. So I don't agree that he performed the worst he's ever performed. I just think...
Wait a minute. That you've just talked about like half of one game there, mate. He played like 3 other games that he lost as well.
What? He played Cho'Gath twice.
Polly, do you want to know the stats for Bjergsen in these 5 games?
Well, give me the champions, and then I'll.
I think he.
Why the stats matter.
Let me check for you. I think he played Cho'Gath. What
Cho'Gath
else?
twice and Ziggs twice, and
Ziggs. Yep.
what was the 5th?
Ziggs twice. Yeah. What was the other one?
Against
Cho'Gath against
EDG,
AHQ and
Against EDG, he played Urgot.
okay, there's the other one. So Cho'Gath,
got it.
Ziggs, and Urgot. What do you think? And by the way, his stats were he had something like twice as many deaths as kills. Like I think he had 24 deaths or something. He had very few assists, and he only got something like 12 kills total.
Well,
That's not Bjergsen, dude. That's not the
their
Bjergsen we
whole
know.
team loss. Of course, he's gonna look like it's his worst performance.
No, that doesn't work if you're an all-time great player. Faker had games in this tournament where the team lost, and he was still fucking doing everything you could possibly do,
But what
like
was Faker-
insane escapes.
What was
The
Faker-
Zoe game.
Look at Game 5 versus EDG. He had a comp built around countering his LeBlanc, and he still
Yeah.
did shit.
Well, that's because it's fucking LeBlanc.
Oh,
I-
Polly, do
Okay.
you know how many games LeBlanc was available for TSM and he didn't pick it?
Before he got shit at chicken, I'll take that back. LeBlanc
Okay.
sucks. I don't give a shit about LeBlanc. That's Faker playing LeBlanc. Yes,
Yeah.
Faker playing LeBlanc is
Okay.
always going to be
Yep.
outperforming other motherfuckers.
No,
you
that's
guys are
you've
comparing that
made a false equivalency there. You've made everyone else. You've made 2 groups: Faker and everyone else in the world.
Yes.
Nope. People like Pawn can play other champions. Dude, Pawn plays fucking Kassadin, goes super all in early game with a rod and fucking kills everyone. That's not what's supposed to even happen. What's Bjergsen doing? He doesn't pick Zed. He doesn't pick LeBlanc. He doesn't pick fucking anything playmaking. And you're just like, yeah, but he got some CS. It's not his fault.
But you're playing-
Leave the mids alone.
You're looking at Ziggs and Cho'Gath and going, why aren't you playing Kassadin, doing stuff Kassadin can do? Cho'Gath can jump over fucking walls and do.
No.
Like,
You-
what is
you
Cho'Gath
got-
gonna do? With
You
Flash?
got me wrong there. I'm with you to the first part where he's playing Cho'Gath and Ziggs and Urgot, and then I go, why are you playing Ziggs and Urgot? But then I don't go because you don't jump over. I go, why are you playing that? So what's the answer, Probably? Why is he playing those champions? Why is the best player in the West from the mid playing those champions in this game?
And why can't he play Cassiopeia and Azir, 2 of the most important picks in this tournament?
Well, Azir, for NA, Azir's always been like Lissandra to NA. Like, EU loves Azir, loves Lissandra. NA's like, no, fuck that shit. I want to play Annie and stuff like that. So that's just not a really NA champion. I don't know why they're so like stubborn with champions like that. But my 2 schools of thought are either, one, Bjergsen was scared. And I just don't think that was true. Like, he's been at a lot of international stuff, and I've always thought he's done well. So I don't think he was scared. The second one is him and Loco agreed on the best mid lane meta, and they were just wrong. Like, they thought that we could pick these kind of scaling mids or like just farming mids, and then they can do fine by putting, jungle pressure bot or something that doesn't need jungle pressure mid. And that's what they thought the meta would be for this tournament. And that was just completely wrong. So I think, there's a lot of reasons why they picked Ziggs and Cho'Gath. I don't know any of them, but I can't find one that I could actually be like, yeah, that was a good reason to pick Ziggs and Cho'Gath.
Or even Urgot mid, which is terrible too.
Yeah, I mean, I think they picked Urgot against C9 a lot, and I think that was good because of that meta in the finals for them. Like, they knew what C9 played a lot, and Urgot was a high priority. But against these other teams, like, Urgot was a priority for bot lane. People didn't really play it mid, I don't think.
No, they didn't.
Only
understand.
TSM did.
Yeah, only
Okay, so here's the thing. What we're sort of doing here is we're bringing in beyond just Bjergsen, we're also bringing in Loco here, because obviously the coaching, unless Bjergsen made these calls all on his own, which seems very unlikely from how the team played out, it seems likely the coach obviously had some say in, like, these are the champions we're going to play. Now, first of all, like we're saying, it's hard to understand these picks, but secondly, they never adapted. You just kept playing these champions over and over. It's not like they've played them once. Like here's a concept for you, Monty. You probably know it, okay? It's actually specific in Dota, where in Dota, since this, like, you can play almost every champion in every position, it's actually very important within Dota that when a tournament starts, you kind of figure out the meta of the tournament. Never mind the meta overall. Like, what in this tournament are people going to prioritize? What are they going to pick? And what is going to become strong in this tournament? And then other people copy that, okay? Or they try to take something that someone else just used and implement it immediately themselves. Now, if you think in the past, we've seen this in League of Legends. In Season 3 Worlds, people were figuring out, okay, let's try using Gragas in all the group stage. Then people were moving over to Orianna in the mid lane for all the playoffs. Like, you saw a meta developing of not just you can use all these champions, but which ones everyone was favoring and what you were going to have to play against. In this concept, TSM didn't just fail to read the meta, right? They never adapted at any point in the tournament. They kept on with this strategy that Bjergsen was going to play these champions and it was going to work somehow.
I honestly think that's a strategy that NA and EU is just not picked up on yet. Like, I noticed that a lot from Korea. Like, EDG and SKT, I felt like their first games were always by far their shittiest. Like, they really were just like, let's see what the fuck they do and learn from it. And that's a really scary thought. Like, you know, a month ago, if you told me this is the way you should do it, I would think that's scary because it's like you're almost handing away a game. But really, it's setting up for the long haul of a best of 5. You're not trying to 3-0 this motherfucker. You're just trying to have a really good set. And I think Korea and China do that really well, where they're kind of scouting out what the opponent does and figure out what they prioritize instead of, you know, let's try to get what we like. But NA and EU, I think, is very honed in on, like, we like this, this, and this. Like, let's try to get these all 3 games. And they kind of disregard everything that happened in the previous ones. And I think that's just, you know, hopefully that will be the next, like, iteration of teams are going to be NA and EU picking up on this and kind of abusing it, because I don't think they do right now.
Well, what's funny is you mentioned that. This actually shows the difference between the regions, because I'll give you an example. EDG, the champions of this tournament, in some of their group stage games, played champions they don't play in group stage games, which are important. So, for example, Deft was playing Kalista a whole bunch. He is not a Kalista player. That's not... Normally, they ban that against other people like Impoter. They don't want that in the game. He's like a fucking Jinx player, plays Corki even. He doesn't play this. Also, they had, like, Pawn was playing Azir. Azir, he actually does play a bit of Azir, but he wasn't known as a good Azir player, for example. There's much stronger champions he can be on.
Cassiopeia, too. He never played Cassiopeia.
The difference is, it seemed like you're saying here, they were willing to kind of, listen, they knew they could do them decently, they could play them decently, so they were willing to try it out mostly against the weaker teams, you'll notice, but to kind of see what those teams would be like and how it would work, and, like, should we keep using this going on? They could actually test a bit, whereas TSM obviously came in with a game plan, and it didn't seem to change much. I actually want to pick you up and I want to ask you, go on, Whitney.
Sorry to interrupt. Not only that, but they weren't prepared for the priority picks from other teams during this tournament. If we look at EDG, I had questions. I was like, okay, Pawn played some Fizz. He played a lot of Kassadin during the playoffs for LPL. But it's going to be really important that he can at least pick Cassiopeia and Azir here. And I thought they'd just keep banning the Kalista, which they did. I mean, they made some mistakes. They gave it over. They lost a game as a large part of due to Bang's Kalista, right, during the finals. But EDG came into this tournament knowing that they had to, at a certain level, contest the Azir and the Cassiopeia with SK Telecom. They had to do something about that, right? Coming into this, because it was, and the Kalista, because these are very strong picks for this team. And they did. They showed them off in the group stages. That was one of the things I was looking for from EDG in terms of Pawn's champion pool. But TSM did literally nothing. They couldn't play Urgot at AD carry. Turtle is a bad Kalista player. They didn't play Azir. They didn't play Cassiopeia. They didn't do anything, it looks like, to prepare for these specific opponents.
Prolly, break this down for me. I've got a question for you. So when we were going through the champions he played, we brought up that he played Urgot mid. That was the game against EDG, right? Which technically was the last game. Like, they had to win it, but they also needed a miracle. Like, I think Bestikas had to beat Fnatic or something for them to go through. So technically it didn't matter. But anyway, he played Urgot, but listen to this comp. I don't know if you remember it. The comp was...
I'm looking at it.
Sion top, Sejuani jungle, Bjergsen's on Urgot mid. Okay, where's our damage come from? Okay, let's keep going. Corki AD carry, and then Lost Boy is on Bard. Right, where is the damage going to come from in this comp? First of all, Corki's the damage dealer there, and that's going to be like mid game. So how are they going to win this game? Am I missing something? What is this comp?
This comp is terrible.
This comp is
like, what could you do as a mid laner in that comp? What's your aim? Do you think
you basically have to get Corki
go like 5-0? Boom. Every lane goes 5-0. Easy game. Who the fuck needs a comp?
You have
I
a
think
very
that's the
you have a
best.
very small window where you can siege with Corki and Urgot and maybe get a good gold lead off of towers.
Like, how
That's
are you
the
going to
only-
team fight against Azir, Callista, and Rek'Sai?
Well, I think that's like talking about
And how are
team
you gonna
fighting. I
kill
think is
Mundo?
why TSM, like, aside from their top jungle synergy, I think the TSM kind of play style where they weren't really, they weren't picking comps to fight. And if you look at like the finals and semifinals, like Rek'Sai became super contested, and then like only melee supports were being picked. No one picked fucking Janna and stuff. And it was because the meta
Well,
for
I
the
think
end
that
of this
was a
tournament was a
mistake.
fight.
I think
Yeah,
it
you
was a
think so?
mistake not to pick Janna, especially for SKT, but we can get into that later.
But like basically the meta was in this tournament was to get a lot of fights, like get those like 15-minute fights. Like 15 to 25 minutes was where you want to fight. The game ended before 15 minutes or before 25 minutes. Like after 25, the game was never decided. It was always before that. So these comps, like sometimes they picked like some late game stuff, and then this looks like they just picked for lane. And if you're not picking like a strong 15-minute fight comp or a 25-minute fight comp, you're just not going to beat any of these teams. So I really don't know why they weren't picking these like fight comps when, after the group stages, it was really obvious from like China and like AHQ and even Korea, like teams are just going to fight all the time. And you really have to adapt to that. You can't really go, I'm just going to pick a decent, wave clear mid and we'll go with that. It's like, you got to pick a team fight and you have to go
But
for it.
okay, so if we're looking, Bjergsen's the best player on the team. We know this. If we're looking for like strong champions, he can play well and then he can do damage on. There were games, literally, it's like you would think, if I told you the results, I didn't show you the pick ban, you would probably think, right, well, people must have just fully target banned Bjergsen out and he had to go into these, no, there were games where Zed was up, nobody banned it, nobody picked it, and he didn't pick it. There was a game, this last game here, where LeBlanc's up, he doesn't pick it, and nobody bans it. Like, it's not like the champions weren't there, they just weren't willing to pick, apparently, for some reason.
Well, I think Zed's scary to play against better teams.
Yeah, but I think Febiven showed us you can do that, though. He lost the game, admittedly, but he was able to do something. At least he made plays.
Yeah, you can make
but
plays.
he lost the game. A lot of the reason why he lost the game was because of the Zed pick. Even if he did get the kills, there was nothing that they could snowball off of it.
Well,
so you'd rather have Urgot.
We'll get to SKT and SKT and Fnatic later, because I actually had like I rewatched that game 3 a lot.
Okay, we'll have a section about that. Don't worry.
But
I mean,
like, I think LeBlanc should have been a much higher priority for TSM. I think it was left up.
A couple of games. There was a couple they were banned. Like, for example, I think it was banned
like
against AHQ banned it, yeah. And then they banned Zed themselves because they didn't want Westo to get it in that game.
But then, like, even against Fnatic, like Fnatic first pick Urgot, and then they took Gnar Rek'Sai. Like, they didn't prioritize the LeBlanc at all. And it's like, if you're a mid-focused team, like, pick that. Like, you don't have to take Gnar for top. Like, I see a lot of top bans, but it's like they played a shit ton of stuff top. Like, I don't know. I just don't think it was either Bjergsen just didn't want to speak up, like he didn't want to be egotistical and be like, give me the carry champs, let me carry. But I think on TSM he needs to have an ego, honestly.
I think that's the thing. When you say that, when like you described it there, Prolly, and people listening might think naively, like, oh, that's good, like he's not egotistical, like he wouldn't say it. But that's another thing about like great competitors. There comes a point, there's a famous anecdote that Michael Jordan gave, right? Where there was a game he was playing, and it was just a regular season game, and at the end of the game, like, they're losing, so he just takes over the game completely. He dominates, he wins the whole game, and as he's coming off the floor, one of the assistant coaches says to him, like, Michael, like, there's no I in team, Mike. And he goes, yeah, but there is in win. And the notion there wasn't that he should every single game take over, but sometimes when the team can't win, he's just going to do it himself. He's like, well, in that case, the team can't do it right now, but I can win this game, so I'm going to take over. Like, eventually, you have to be a bit selfish. It's one thing to go too far, but we're talking about a balance here. You can't be totally selfless if you're the carry of the team.
And just as a counterpoint, Westor came into this tournament with a champion pool that consisted of Fizz, Zed, Karthus, Twisted Fate. Pretty much, right? Not really a whole... and Cho'Gath. Not really a whole lot of meta champions, right? But a lot of assassins and a lot of champions like TF that can make plays elsewhere on the map. And you know what? AHQ made it work. Even with picks that I don't even think are ideal right now, they still did a lot better. So even if, I agree with you, even if it's not a great meta for Zed, even if it's not a great meta for LeBlanc, it isn't for either of those champions. But guess what? You could still get wins on them, and you can at least still try to carry your team.
Okay.
Also, yeah, okay, come on, lay it on me. Lay it on me.
Right.
New TSM theory, okay, new, okay.
Okay, new. No one's ever thought about
Pioneering.
this. I'm a genius,
Yeah.
and it goes something like this. Let's see. At the last MSI, they like praise their analysts. They're like, the analysts gave us a lot of.
IEM,
work.
you mean?
IEM, yeah. What
Yeah,
did I?
okay.
Don't listen to me. Anyways, yeah, like they gave us a lot of good intel, and they really helped us win this series.
I gave them binders as well, but okay.
All right, so this
Keep
tournament,
going.
the analysts boycotted. They didn't get enough money, so TSM
okay,
didn't get
yeah.
this information. They lost all their confidence because they had no
Labor
info. They're like,
unions, yeah.
how do I watch LPL? Like, how do I watch LCK? Like, someone else did that for me, and now I don't know how. I don't know how to do this watching VODs. So they didn't have info, no confidence, picked Shogath mid, lost games. Solved it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but here's the problem. Here's a hypothetical, purely hypothetical. Let's imagine that their analysts didn't boycott, and that their analysts actually were trying really hard, as though it was sort of like a full-time job. They're really going above and beyond the Call of Duty. Really did watch the games. Really did deliver all that information to Lord Lokodoko. Really did allow him full capacity to actually do this, and they still fucked up every single game almost, except Bastikas Esports Club, and were a laughing stock of the tournament. Now, what if that was the case? What would your conclusions be there?
I don't know. I couldn't believe that because like if they got all this,
I know it's hard to. You don't want to believe it, but let's see if you can.
I don't want to, but it's like,
okay.
How can? Because it showed like a lack of just confidence. The way like Santorin played and like the pick and ban went, it really seemed like they just. And even when they played against Fnatic, that was like the telltale for me. It's like we had just watched Fnatic like the semis they played against us. Unicorns of Love, they couldn't really learn much because that was. Yeah, I'm kind of on Monty's side of the opinion on that series. But you can really learn how Fnatic plays. Like, everyone knows how Fnatic plays. Like, go watch EULCS, go watch, like, the semis. Like, you can figure out what they do. And when TSM versus Fnatic matched up, TSM did not predict anything from Fnatic. It was almost like Fnatic was, like, an underground team and no one knew what the fuck they were going to do. It's like everything they did was predictable. They did it right. They played really great, but I could have told you everything Fnatic was going to do that game. So it's like they either didn't have the information or they just didn't want to look at it. And all of this kind of like, sums up like, maybe they didn't have this information and they're just like confused as why stuff was happening wrong or going wrong.
And the point is, why TSM is so confusing is because I meant it when I said they were the best team in the West. They looked really good in the NALCS playoffs. Yep. And to have this kind of performance where not only they go 1-4, but none of their losses are even remotely close. They just got crushed in every single game. It's like it has to be more than just a planning failure, right? It's more than just a pick ban failure. It's more than just an individual player
Here's the
failure.
thing.
It is a failure at every single one of these levels. And so my theory, actually, is that before IEM, in the TSM gaming house, they went down to the basement and they drew a giant pentagram in blood on the floor and they lit a bunch of candles and they had a virgin sacrifice down there and Beelzebub...
No, Bjergsen's still alive. So. Right, yeah. A woman, right, a woman. Okay, yeah, keep going.
Beelzebub rises
it's my time.
in a puff of smoke and sulfur and they make the deal with the devil. And the deal with the devil is we get to win IEM in return for getting completely blown the fuck out at MSI. Okay. That's
See, here's the problem. I would have thought that like TSM, I agree with you. I mean, if you've joined TSM, you're obviously adept at making deals with the devil, in exchange for like better opportunities in your career. I agree with you. Like I can see why they'd be open to it. Okay. But yeah, interesting theory. So, but actually, to touch on a point you made there, though,
I don't have any rationalization for how everything could go wrong.
But here's to touch on a point of something else that I think's kind of like underplaying what happened to TSM in terms of analysis. Another thing I've heard people say, and they say it whenever a good team loses, they say, right, well, they just weren't prepared enough. Like, they weren't prepared properly in the right way. Like, the problem with saying you weren't prepared usually is that it sounds like you just didn't get like time to do this work, or you didn't have the opportunity to. No, TSM was on home soil. They knew this event was coming long before. They knew it was most likely they were going to be the ones who'd qualify for it. They then knew they got to watch the other teams play and qualify as team. They had plenty of time. Every other team's flying there. All these advantages were on their side. It's not that they weren't prepared enough. It's that they did poor preparation, and they are bad at the moment for whatever reasons. They've made themselves bad.
And they had extra time to prepare. Remember that SK Telecom didn't even know they were going to MSI until Saturday night and had to fly out on Monday to compete in a tournament that started on Thursday. SKT had I had a 19-hour flight from Korea, okay? And EDG had another week. Their finals happened the week before. So SKT was busy prepping for GE in the finals, finished on Saturday night. Then we're like, oh shit, you better go compete internationally now. Oh, we also have a 20-hour flight. That's probably going to cut down on our trip. And so they had to leave on Monday, got there on Monday because of the time zone differences, and then that was their prep time. So they had there's a team that got into the finals and nearly won this tournament.
Because you know that whole thing of like that excuse is it makes it sound like, oh, well, if you just did things differently next time, it'll be okay. That's the point I'm trying to make here, is that it wasn't that they didn't prepare, it's that their preparation was apparently crap or misguided, or there's something important that was wrong with the preparation. That's what needs to be fixed. It's not that if you just played this over 10 times, next time they'd do the right way. No, you can't necessarily say that. It looks like there was an issue here. Although, I have to say, by the way, talking about the games, if you remember, the first game was the one where they played Fnatic, and Huni had like Cassiopeia. Now, even though he made this long Reddit post explaining what he actually meant by his statement, when Jat made that tweet, I almost had tears in my eyes laughing.
Wait, what was this?
The tweet where Jat said that TSM played terribly, and like as soon as Huni locked in Cassiopeia in game one, it looked like they were just on tilt for the rest of the tournament. So basically, just in Champ Select alone, they were tilted for the rest of the whole tournament. Now, whether he meant something different and he couldn't expand upon it, I thought that was hilarious because Broken Shard had one of the all-time great follow-ups where Broken Shard said, yeah, I had a Cassiopeia lock-in top in one of my solo queue games 4 months ago. I guess that's why I've sucked. I've been on tilt ever since. That's actually pretty legit. I'll give you points there, Broken Shard. Well played. He set that one up. You knocked it down, my friend.
But yes, here's a funny story. So during that Champ Select, so it was obviously the first game of the tournament, and one of TSM's traditional weaknesses has been when you, especially over the last year, when you throw a champion at them that they don't expect, that they're not prepared for, even though Huni had been playing a bunch of top Cassie and solo queue and that was easily researchable. If you do this and they don't have a plan, and actually it was a brilliant plan by Fnatic, they're like, well, they're not going to gank top lane, so why don't we just play Cassiopeia and farm and pressure and dive Dyrus under the turret? And TSM didn't lane swap or anything like that either. So I was very impressed. And so I was sitting back there talking with, trying to remember who was back there at the time.
Name drop.
No, I don't know. It was some of the other analysts. I forget who was.
Was it someone from Imagine Dragons?
No, it was just me and some of the other casters.
Okay.
No, we were sitting there talking about it, and they're like, "Well, all Santorin has to do is go top lane." I'm like, "Yes, but remember how TSM always freaks out and never does the right thing? Remember the Swain that SK played at Worlds? Remember the jungle TF?" Remember, like, this is just another long line. TSM's very good at adapting between games, but if something weird happens to them in Champion Select, there's a weird champion they haven't played before, there's a strange scenario, they're very poor at in-game adaptation to it. And I was like, they're like, oh, well, I forget who I was talking to. It's like, yeah, just camp the Cassiopeia top lane, no problem. And I'm like, but they're not going to do that. And everyone, all the other customers are like, oh, yeah, they are. You know, of course they will. Why wouldn't you do that? I'm like, but it's TSM, they won't do it. And then they didn't do it.
See, maybe Fnatic knew this, Monty. Maybe in picking Cassio, it was all calculated. See that,
just
Monty?
tilt them. They were using
that was actually a calculator joke.
Just tilt them.
Casio is a calculator brand.
No, like I know earlier I talked
he
like,
missed that one,
about All right, I talked about or criticized Loco a bit about what he could have done, and that's kind of where I'm obviously a coach now, so a lot of my opinions are going to be coach based, and that is literally, what the fuck are you doing in the last 60 seconds of Champ Select? You see both comps. You talk about early game. You tell your team what the fuck to do to early game. You tell them what to do mid game. Do you want to give dragons? Do you want to fight dragons? Do you want to group for this or this? Do you want to 1-3-1 with the rest of the game? You literally lay out the entire game plan in those 60 seconds. It's not that hard. Well, and that's honestly one of them is camp the fuck out of Cassio. That should have been said in Champion Select by Loco Doco. The other players, they don't have to have a brain.
Against Cassio. How about lane swap
against
Cassio?
Those both work. Those are both fine. But it's I don't know, that's where I would put all the pressure on me. If we played this game and we were TSM and shit happened, I would have blamed myself and gone, fuck, I should have yelled at you guys to camp Cassio, or I should have yelled at you guys to 2v1. I would have taken blame for that game.
You also know how it is to be a coach, so what if he did say that and Santorin just doesn't do it?
Yeah, that's where it just sucks. You gotta be a lot more, either you have to fucking try a lot harder to convince people. That obviously seems like you lost respect, or the players just fucked up really hard. If the players are we knew what to do and we just fucked it up, I'm really, really sorry. And it's cool, next week we're fucking scrimming 10 hours straight. That's what you guys get for that. There has to be something in place where they either forgot or they just they didn't agree with your opinion enough. And if that's the point, then you have a lot more to work on as a coach. But if it's the latter where they just kind of messed up a bit and they didn't get it right, then cool, next week of scrims you go really hard.
Because another player aside from Bjergsen, who in an ideal world, another position that you can have your team lose, but you can still do something, is AD carry. In theory, if your AD carry is competent, is good, and is on decent champions, and at the end of the day, if you're not picking half these champions we described, that someone has to be getting good champions for them. It's not Dota. There's not 5 bans here, guys. There's 3 bans and none of them are going to any of our. Why aren't we picking things we're strong on? So that whole thing that people get super mad at, Monty. Santorin's one where people got super mad at you for suggesting he wasn't the best jungler in the West after IEM, and then they get super mad at you all the time for saying Wild Turtle isn't super good. Where was Wild Turtle in this tournament? It's another one where, listen, he hasn't been that great in tournaments that they dominated. In this tournament where they did nothing, he really wasn't even. He was invisible on the map. I didn't even notice he wasn't doing anything because he just was non-existent.
Also, notice how Kalista is routinely banned, and we see that the power of Kalista in the hands of a team like SK Telecom, and then notice that no one even thinks to ban Kalista against TSM. In fact, they let TSM have it and then just put him in the dumpster. He's a non-threat. No one considers him a threatening AD carry. His opponents, that is.
What's crazy about this is, I remember after I saw that famous video, it's from the TSM Legends series, where people linked me to it, and it highlights an actual argument that Loco has with Bjergsen. And the argument is about how much mid-priority they should put in terms of picks. And Bjergsen's arguing, give me the right champions and I'll carry the game. And Loco Doco's sort of trying to explain to him, no, we're going to build more for the comp, and sometimes you're going to have to play something like Lulu or whatever, and it's going to make the comp be stronger, and as a team will win. Now, that's on paper, that is absolutely great. That's a great actual discussion for a star player and a coach to be having and trying to come to a consensus. The problem is, what they arrived at with a team concept made less sense than sometimes giving strong champions to the mid laner. As we're describing here, Dyrus is getting completely shit on. The ID carries a non-factor, and who have we got left? Our mid laners on Ziggs, Urgot, Cho'Gath. How are we ever going to win these games? Everything would have to be going perfectly aside from the champions for our team to win.
I think if they started picking, I think Sivir, Cho'Gath, I think that's fine. But I think when they started picking Ziggs and Sivir, I think you're running into too low of damage, and what the fuck is Ziggs going to do with Sivir ult? You can't really chase him down with Ziggs. That means you're just going to run faster away. So I think if they went back to Jinx more, because Jinx was left up all these games, and Wild Turtle, I think, makes sense on Jinx because he will flash forward to get the one last hit on someone, and that will give him the reset. So I think Jinx kind of favors him a lot. I think Sivir's a bit there too, but I kind of I don't see him as a Kalista player at all. And I think those are just really hard games to win just based on, you're giving an AD carry who that doesn't fit him really to play a Kalista at all. So he played Kalista twice or 3 times.
Unsure. But
He
anyway,
played it versus SKT. He may have only played it versus SKT.
He played against AHQ also.
Ah, yes.
So like those games are just like, you know.
But and look at the priority. They first picked Kalista against AHQ.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It just seems really. Maybe they just had really good scrim results. I don't know. Give them something. I really can't. I can't see why that'd be that great.
So okay, let's talk about actually the AHQ game there then, because listen, it's one thing to lose to Fnatic, and Fnatic turned out to be one of the revelations of the tournament. They had a fantastic series against SKT. Okay, great stuff. So Fnatic, let's give them a slight pass on that, not a whole one, because they should have been capable of beating them still. Okay, so the Fnatic one's one thing. Again, SK Telecom and EDG clearly were two fantastic teams, but the AHQ one's the one that sticks with me. Because, okay, we all know AHQ has Westdoor, and if you give him certain champions, he can be very good on it, but Fizz isn't even the meta champion right now when he's playing.
No, it's terrible.
And then they had Urgot AD carry, they had just Maokai top. It's not like, how did they lose this game so poorly? They got 3 kills in this game. I mean, AHQ's not the team that should have been beating them, you know. What do you think, Monty?
I'm pulling up the game real quick. Give me a second. I think at this point, I don't even know what was going on, but they were just getting outplayed in every little skirmish. Was a big part of it.
I mean, this is like in this game, Santorin has Gragas, which is actually one of his strongest champs recently.
I mean, it was also the same old story of Dyrus giving up that first blood in the top lane. And because Dyrus refused to play Smite on Hecarim, he kept playing Ignite, which is really confusing to me as to why he would keep doing that. Especially given the circumstances of the fact that he never was in a position with kill pressure, because he never had any real jungle pressure in the top side. Why the fuck do you take Ignite? Just take Smite and go farm the jungle. Because it's not even that Santorin isn't ganking for you. He's literally never on the same side of the map as you are.
Huni actually played a game of Smite or Ignite TP Hecarim too. And I don't know, in my opinion, like I thought that was phased out the second people figured out Smite worked on Hecarim. I thought Ignite just became a worthless summoner on Hecarim.
But you can see why Huni would do it, right? Because of Fnatic's playstyle, it actually makes sense. If you're going to snowball topside,
I guess if you're going to try to...
If you're
I mean, he does have a lot of jungle pressure top. You have to remember, Febiven doesn't get all the jungle pressure. Huni gets most of it.
Yeah, but like even
constantly is ganking top.
But with Smite, you don't even have to like snowball it. It's like, you know, he actually becomes a hyper carry with Smite, and you know,
look, I agree
if you do get a kill for that Smite lane, it's going to go over really quickly.
I agree with you that I also think that Smite is superior, especially because you never know if you're going to get lane swapped on, and Smite is super good in that situation, right? It's more versatile.
Yeah.
The build is slower, right? Because you don't have... The Trinity Force is going to do a lot more damage than just the Cinder Hulk enchantment early on in the game. So Cinder Hulk, you have to wait till you get like 3 or 4 core items before you really start becoming strong and a backline threat. Whereas with Trinity Force and Home Guards, you're pretty much a backline threat immediately. So there's a timing difference also with that. Right, so there are pros and cons. I still think Smite is better personally, but what I'm saying is, with Fnatic, you could make an argument that Ignite makes sense on Hecarim.
Okay.
We know Huni likes to TP into the bottom lane early.
Yeah.
We know he gets a lot of early jungle pressure from Reignover. Why is Ignite good on Dyrus' Hecarim? It does not suit the team style.
Do you think he was worried about getting fucked up in lane and he wanted to just be able to do more damage to even it up?
Maybe.
Well, even then, I feel like if you're losing lane and you have Smite, it's like, cool, now you're just going to go jungle for a bit and be fine. So I still feel like Smite would be a better for, like, if lanes are so bad.
For TSM, I don't see a reason not to use Smite.
Yeah, I'd say it's better in all scenarios for TSM at least.
Here's a little thought exercise I want people who are fans of this show to do. So you know everyone always gets all their feathers get ruffled up, Monty, whenever I bring up Froggen, since he's not been doing very well this season, and they say, oh, you're so biased, and you talk away every one of his losses. Here's a little thought experiment I want people to do who are fans of TSM and Bjergsen, because I think he's a very good player, but this was a terrible tournament. Imagine that this team was identical, but Froggen played all these same champions and had identical results, and then I came on this show and said, but in that one game he got a few more CS than Faker, and in the other games maybe it wasn't his fault, maybe the coach told him to pick those. Imagine how you would judge me and how you would judge Froggen for this terrible a performance, because here's a statement for you. Froggen has never had a tournament performance as bad as Bjergsen's at this tournament. Now, you might think to yourself, wait a minute, that can't be true. What about Worlds? No, at Worlds, he had tournaments where he was the main carry who beat Najin Whiteshield, beat Cloud9. What about IEM San Jose, where they lost in the semi-finals? He had one game there where he was really good on Lissandra. He had games in general where he was okay. I've never seen Froggen in his whole career have a tournament this bad. Now, I don't say that Froggen right now is amazing, but that's the problem, is that this is Bjergsen's prime right now. So this should be a bit concerning if you're a Bjergsen fan, actually. I'm not someone who thinks like this is the end of his career. He can have future tournaments that are amazing, and we'll never have to worry about this one again. But this at the moment, consider it as an opportunity to kind of take a step forwards, is definitely like he's hindered it for a while at least.
Right. And what we always say about Bjergsen is that he's a good mid laner. We saw that even in this tournament, at least in terms of his laning phase, and he held up very well. But that's a very small part of the game, obviously. And yes, you can only do so much when your team is crumbling around you and you have picks that don't allow you to really carry in the mid game. But at the same time, what is preventing Bjergsen from being a top player is the fact that he still doesn't have very impressive international results. Even when he gets up against other EU mid laners, I think the statistic now is he's 1-4 in international competitions against Europe. He gets outside of NA and nothing happens.
Especially, like, the real killer to me was, like, okay, the obvious one would be that Westall did so well against him when no one really considers Westall like a godlike mid lane. He's just considered like a niche talent. On certain champions he's very good, and even then it's not like he can pick Fizz every game and dominate. It's not going to work sometimes. Same with Zed. So beyond that, okay, it's one thing if Pawn and Faker beat you. That's acceptable. They're amazing players. They're some of the best in the world. The killer for me is Febiven doing better than Bjergsen. Because remember, on the hierarchy, Febiven's supposed to be below Bjergsen. They're both European mid laners. Bjergsen has all the experience, all the results, all the accomplishments. In theory, plays with a better team, plays with people who aren't rookies, plays under a proper coaching system. That Febiven outperformed him here, just in contrast, makes Bjergsen look quite bad at this tournament.
I don't know, I think this is still apples and oranges. Like,
really? So there's one apple that's like rotting, and the orange is lovely and delicious, and you're like, you can't compare the two. Who can say?
Like, I mean,
I like the taste of rotten apple myself, mate. You know, I'm not an orange man.
I'm sure you do. You're a rotten person, and it makes sense. It fits you very well.
So, okay, explain to me how a losing NA mid laner could actually be a good player. Go on, Polly, go on.
No, I'm explaining to you that we're looking at Bjergsen playing 2 Cho'Gath games, 2 Ziggs games. We'll give Urgot, maybe Urgot can be a lane stomper, assassin.
Okay.
He's ugly as shit. But let's see, 2 Cho'Gath, 2 Ziggs. You're not going to look ridiculously amazing on those champions. Like, yeah, at finals, he had he dumpstered high and lane really hard. That can happen, but it's more of like when you play Zed, you're gonna stomp someone who makes mistakes or just plays poorly. You're not gonna stomp someone who plays very well. Like Zed punishes the mistakes. He doesn't really make super gigantic outplays, and that's kind of what this is here. It's like Cho'Gath can do the same thing, but he's not gonna make gigantic plays if other people are playing correctly. And same thing with Ziggs, and that's literally he's going against really good mid laners, so.
Probably, if you were the best Western mid laner and you were playing a mid laner who's considered worse than you, and you were playing a mid laner from Taiwan, and you were playing these champions we're describing here, what would you actually have to do before you would accept that it was a poor performance? What would have to happen on these champions to be a poor performance? I mean, he got out the base, he bought some items, he killed some minions. What more does he have to do, you know? According to you, never making a play on champions that don't make plays often is like almost a positive. Like, I don't understand. I don't know where you're going on this.
If he made good calls, that's how he could have a good performance. Obviously, I have no.
Well, since we can't know if he does that, why would you assume he did that?
But that's the one thing you could do well. Playing Cho'Gath mid is cool. How are you pressuring mid lane to rotate to other lanes? Like, maybe you're controlling Scuttle Crab, which is actually pretty decent.
Okay, here's the weird thing. I think you've just actually made a point I hadn't even thought of as to why actually this is even worse for Bjergsen. Because he's the shot caller of the team. If he's accepting that he's going to play these champions, in theory he should have a notion of how they're going to win the game, what the win conditions are, and he should be making calls which are informing what his teammates do. Therefore, if his teammates do badly, that also now comes back on Bjergsen to a degree. So thank you for making it even worse for Bjergsen. You are in many ways an a double agent.
Like, oh my god.
Okay, come on.
That's
come
like
on. Breathe in.
It's just really hard because you're looking at people playing assassins and then people playing a team comp mid, and I think it was a mistake by TSM to keep picking these team comp mid laners when all they needed to do is pick an assassin or pick someone who's more like, roaming capable, like early game impact. And yeah, honestly, this is like no one thinks Bjergsen's the best Cho'Gath in A or anything. You could make an argument for his LeBlanc, for his Zed, for his
real talk, Prolly. Imagine again. Let's do the same thought experiment. Imagine this was just a Froggen tournament from the past. So okay, at IEM San Jose, he played Xerath a bunch and was not very good with it. If he plays Xerath, but he doesn't make any plays and he doesn't get any kills and he just farms and the team loses, would you say the same thing? Like, well, he's playing team comp champion and he wasn't, he's not going to make like a Zed outplay. Like, he did fine. I don't know if you would.
No,
you'd probably just be like, what a mistake of that champion, didn't do very much on it,
Well, see, I'd have to rewatch the game to stare at this guy to see if he literally just AFK farms mid, because that would be the worst thing to do. And maybe Bjergsen did do that in this tournament, but come mid game, I wasn't staring at mid lane anymore. Like 10.
How much did they pay you, Prolly? How much did they get to you with? Will they release the hostages after this episode? What is it, Prolly? Come on, tell me what's wrong.
Getting away from the basement after this airs, so I'm waiting for that. But no, like I don't know. Like there's just so much like speculation going on, and it's just heartbreaking because I really did like the two things I wanted from MSI were Fnatic to do well and like TSM to do well. So now
one
that
out of
TSM
two
hasn't done well, I'm like, fuck me. Like I'm angry about it, and then I'm like, bartering like maybe it's okay because I still think it is okay. Like I think this is.
Oh god, Monty, he thinks it's okay that TSM went 1-4.
This is just fucking unlucky. And
oh my god, it was luck. It was luck.
This tournament was just unlucky for TSM. Like
holy shit.
Go that way. If you go that way, then we can just write off their IEM win as #fucking lucky.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
And there's no skill involved in League of Legends at any stage.
Co-signed Prolly.
I mean, I don't think no one's lucky in EU. It's you're unlucky or you're fucking boosted or some shit. So I just don't even know, man. Cause like who puts Bjergsen on like 0 carry potential champions or like low carry potential champions? Like him playing Ziggs, like fuck yeah.
This guy who used to be like an AD carry in Korea and then he was like briefly a support player and I think that guy actually puts him on them.
Well, it had to be an
agreement. And deserves full credit.
Listen, Bjergsen and Loco that this was the right thing to do.
As a coach, deserves full credit for all of their wins and losses. Okay, there you go.
No.
Full credit. Okay, yeah.
All wins, I get full credit.
It's weird how they never want to accept that end of the bargain. Yeah, exactly. Every single coach is like, when they won, like, well done, boys. You implemented the game plan well there. Whenever you lose, why didn't you listen to what I said? I specifically told you not to lose this game. What are you doing right now? Like, what? Come on, man.
Disappointment sometimes.
But that's actually an interesting point about coaching. I've made this point many times in the past. An aspect of coaching that you do have to take responsibility for is it's one thing if Bjergsen plays the first few games on these champions and doesn't perform and was like, listen, I could go another game. Like, give me a third game. It'll work this time. But if at that point in time it doesn't work, as the coach, you have to identify, like, well, even if he says that he can do it, it isn't working. Like, I can't put him onto stuff that he's not going to be able to play or do what we need to succeed, So that does fall on the coach to a degree, right? That some of the picks in that sense.
Yeah, like in our set against SK for the third place match or whatever, they played Kassadin game 2, and we'd played Kassadin once in scrims on the new patch. So we weren't even playing on like the old patch Kassadin. But the third game came about and Ryu goes like, I want to play Kassadin, like let me play Kassadin. And this was literally a moment where it's like, okay, I'm gonna let him do this. If we lose, then I'm gonna learn. Like, I can't always put my trust in these players, like, I want to see at least a couple of games before we play this. But if we win, then it's like, cool, now I can just trust Ryu more with the champions he feels confident on. And that's kind of what that next game went into. We played Kassadin and won. So it's like either way, like win or lose that game, I would have either learned to, like, command my players to, show me more results before we play it, or I give my players more like freedom to play champions like that. So that's where, like, yeah, like I could have learned from either way, and either way I would be, right and wrong, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the principle for a coach here, Monty. You have to be able to learn. It's like there's this old Zen anecdote, this old Zen parable, Monty, where this student goes to a Zen temple and he sits before this like master sort of, whatever you call them, like Zen Roshi or whatever they're called. And this guy's sat there and he says, like, teach me, master, I want to learn your wisdom. And so the student, he says, like, give me your glass of water. And he fills the student's glass of water full. And then he just keeps pouring, and he keeps pouring. It's just pouring all over outside the glass. And the student's like, there's too much, like, it can't fit in. He's like, exactly. Until you empty your glass, you won't be able to fill it with learning, When it's full already, there's no space for more learning. And that's like kind of a little principle there for the coach of the world. Don't always think you know best, You might think you do. You might think you've got the game on lock, but there's always something to be learned, Yeah, just a little something. I have to say, Monty, one of the things I did enjoy an awful lot about this tournament, and the way it's... What's great about a movie is that to have it be satisfying, it can't just be like you go from the beginning of like what you want to happen to what you want to happen immediately. There have to be stages where it's like the satisfaction is like the process that unfolds. Okay, so like a heist movie, they can't just like immediately find the plan to how to do it and everything works and they just get away with the jewels. There has to be like something goes wrong and then they adapt to that plan, and then there was a little secret twist at the end that they had in the plan. So here's what I loved about this tournament, Monty. It's not, I don't dislike TSM the team, but I think you know how I feel about certain elements of the TSM fan base who respond in particular manners, win or lose, let's just say. So one of the things that I particularly enjoyed about the way this tournament played out, that was perfect, I couldn't have scripted it better, was it started out with Fnatic versus TSM. So if you remember, Fnatic wins, and Fnatic isn't supposed to beat TSM, so that alone starts the shit talking. All the EU fanboys finally,
I thought Fnatic would win.
They get to get their sword out, they get to actually like talk some shit after all these months of NA teams doing better. They finally get to talk some shit, so they take that opportunity and they run with it, Monty. They're talking mad shit, so the NA fans are getting mad. You know that thing in that video that you linked to from Somebody Insight, where I said that the standard thing of NA fans is not to be like, oh, I guess we better just take our lumps now. We gave out a lot of shit to them, so we should just take our lumps. No, instead it's always to be like, come on, do you have to be so classless as to talk shit? Why can't you just focus on the good, not on the team that's lost? Like all that amazing, delicious, beautiful irony and sorrow, that pain that's released, and I fucking eat it up. But anyway, aside from that, so this is the beauty, Monty. It starts like this. So that builds the first initial tension point, which is EU fans have talked mad shit. So if you remember, what happens next is Fnatic loses to AHQ. Oh my god. Fnatic's been upset. So finally, even though TSM hasn't won a game yet, TSM fans think, wait a minute. NA fans think, wait, they're not supposed to lose this game. Oh my god, it was a fluke. They've been upset by Taiwanese team. So they laugh and they make all the chat talk. They're like, haha, you lost to a Taiwanese team, you idiots. Taiwan aren't even good. It was all a fluke. You fucking suck, EU. You suck so hard. And then do you remember what happens next, Monty? Do you know what happens next in the perfect storyline? TSM loses to AHQ. I was euphoric at that moment. I was just like, I felt like a light came down from heaven.
Blood rushing to
Almost. Like the light came, it's like for a moment, as the cloud, it had been a sunny day and the cloud had passed across the sun and blocked it, and it got like, like a little bit dark, but not much. And then suddenly, out of the middle of the cloud, there was a little hole, and one shaft of light just beamed down right onto me, like, and I realised, like, there is still good in the world. And at that moment, I also realised, wait a minute, TSM's lost 2 games to Fnatic and AHQ. They still have to play EDG, SKT. That means the odds are they're going out of this tournament. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Yeah, so anyway, it's the way it played out that made it especially, it was almost Shakespearean, Monty, the way they thought they'd come back in and triumph, only to have it snatched away from them. It was beautiful. It's great times we live in, Monty. Great times. You know how I said this is like the darkest timeline because all the great players are abused and like on the benches and stuff? Maybe it was all worth it in the end. Maybe we had to come to this point in life so that we could have these things. Maybe God does work in mysterious ways and things do happen for a reason, Monty. Suddenly I feel like my whole life, it had to happen this way, Actually, I have a question as we go forwards. because it's going to relate to the other teams at MSI. So I want to ask, first of all, your thoughts on Cinderhulk, because there's some ridiculous stat came out after this tournament, Monty, that like 94% of like jungle play was like people picking Cinderhulk or some shit in this tournament. Like, wasn't the whole point of all these enchantments and different jungle items to make incredible diversity, and so you could play every style of jungle, and now everyone just goes for the bonus HP and stacks the fuck out of armor and just health, which seems to be the OP shit right now, and it's there's no diversity.
It is, because multiplicative stats in League of Legends are super good, right? The fact that you get percentage bonus HP means that in the late game you're just ridiculously strong. So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, if you told me before MSI that it would be 94% Cinderhulk, I'd be like, that seems kind of low. Why not 100% Cinderhulk? It is too good right now. But I think that Riot, right before this tournament, didn't want to break the tank meta to cause a giant chaos into the meta. I think we will, obviously Riot's very well aware that this isn't okay, so they'll dial it back for sure.
What do you think, Prolly? What do you think of this world of tanks that we're back into?
Well, the one thing I disagree on is that Riot will fix this correctly. I don't think this will be something like the way that this came about was pretty moronic. It's they start to nerf all the old junglers and simultaneously buff different junglers. And it's kind of like how when mid lane meta or any type of like top or mid lane meta goes like awry, it's because they'll nerf the top champions, like the top tier champions, and then buff others. So it's like two things happening at once. It's not just like a buff to the low ones, so like, you know, we can get more, you know, diversity and contrast what's actually strong. But it's like they'll do two different things at the same time. So it's like if this guy's here and
without
this guy's
knowing
here,
kind of the interaction that'll take place.
Instead of like bringing it down like this, it's like they're like boosh, super swap. It's like I don't even know what they're doing. And yeah, the Cinderhulk makes sense because, or like the win rate or the usage rate makes sense because I don't know, like League is won on like 1K gold lead at 10 minutes is like some ridiculous like 75% chance to win or something.
Unless you're Fnatic. Unless you're playing SKT.
Something like that. But yeah. I mean, small gold leads like snowball a lot in this game. And Cinderhulk literally gives you a free gold lead, 25% bonus health. That's huge. You know, so I don't know.
I feel like the analogy for Riot's balancing is like that childhood fairground game Whack-A-Mole. And when you hit a mole in one area, it causes two moles to pop up elsewhere. So you whack those moles, and you just... Listen, you'll never get all the moles down simultaneously. That's not the object of the game here, guys. You just have to keep whacking moles. And as long as you keep whacking moles, they appear in different areas. So the key is to get the moles in the different holes. Yeah.
They're whacking the mole, and then trying to put a new hole in where another mole comes up. They're like, I got this. And they're like, oh shit, now there's even more moles.
That's quite good. Well done there. Well
done. Now. It's like,
see, I appreciate a good analogy, Monty. I like that. They're actually like modifying the machine to add new holes, and then they're like, why is there more moles here? What is with all these moles? Where are they coming from? It's like, okay.
Yeah, so like, I don't know. I just don't like it. I don't like the Cinderhulk meta at all. I think it makes it just really boring. It ruins the mid meta, in my opinion, and like the AD carry meta. It just makes the game really like, this sucks. Like, if a Cinderhulk jungler gets ahead, you're not gonna win that game. I want to see a stat line for that. I want to see like a 2-0 Cinderhulk jungler.
That's why the game. That's exactly what I'm talking about with the multiplicative stats. Multiplicative stats are so dangerous in League of Legends because there aren't very many of them, and it breaks linear scaling. It creates this. You know, it creates this. It's like the further you get ahead, the more you get ahead, like you're saying, like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know that Prolly wouldn't appreciate that after playing in Season 3 with that assassin meta where all the mid laners got to just shit on everyone's face. And then if they even had like 2 kills, that already made them like way better than an AD carry who's up like 40 CS, you know? I know he'd hate that. He doesn't like that sort of imbalance in the game, Monty.
Yeah,
you know?
I like the balanced mid lane. Like Karthus and Nivea mid game. Every single time.
I actually don't think the meta outside of Cinderhulk is that bad right now. And in fact, I found this tournament very amusing and like very entertaining and very competitive in spite of the Cinderhulk issue. But it does need to be, the multiplicative stats need to be dialed back, and then we'll be in a better place.
Yeah, but Monty, let's face it. You say it was entertaining and all that. It did help the tournament in that respect, that all the junglers in general were weaker ones. Like the best player by far at jungle was fucking Clearlove.
Yes.
Then Bengi was like the second best, and let's face it, he's not like a monster.
No, he's
So,
not.
so I'd have been more worried if it had been like Kakao, Dandy, those players. They're unable to do anything because they have to play. They have to play the Cinderhulk. You know, that would be where you'd be concerned. Is if those players can't play champions that they're good on and have any more effect than just be the tank jungler. So now that we've got the TSM thing out of our system. You know, we've purged the poison. Now we can talk about the good of this. Well. Yeah, that's right, TSM fans, because that part wasn't good, that TSM lost and got completion. No, but now we can talk about the good things that happened at this tournament. Now we can talk about what was good at this tournament. So let's start with Fnatic. So I have to say, I went in on Bjergsen, said this was a terrible performance. This performance by Febiven at this tournament, Monty, this was fucking incredible shit. I mean, I'm trying to think in my mind. If I had to rank like players in a best of 5 against Faker, mid laners and their performances, Febiven's already, that performance would already be top 10. I'm not going to be ridiculous and put him in like the top, because obviously there's like Pawn, loads of people who had amazing performances against him. But it's already a very good one. Very unlikely that we'll ever see something like that in a best of 5.
Especially for a rookie. I mean, I think Febiven did an amazing job as a rookie player coming into a big international tournament, and just his confidence going up against Faker as a player was pretty amazing. He didn't let himself get psyched out or anything like that. He gave it his all.
Actually, Febiven, I think, is a really good example of like a good controlled ego. Like, I think he has just enough ego to not hurt his team, but be able to do well in situations like this. Like, he's a rookie going against Faker, and he has enough ego to be like, I'm gonna kill this guy. He shouldn't have that. Like, if you want to like look at it on paper, you should be just terrified in general. So he's like approaching the game, I think, in a really correct way, and I think that's a good example of like the ego you need, as long as it's not like, yeah, I'm not gonna play fucking Azir because he can't 1v1 the mid lane. That's when the ego starts going bad.
Well, one of the things about Faker that makes him like the best entirely isn't just his skills, which alone would make him the best, like, but it wouldn't make him as much. It's a principle that I've noticed in all sports, which is that when you're like the godlike player, like you're not just the best, because you can be the best as in just by a narrow margin. There's a bunch of other guys around your level, and maybe there's like an A beats B beats C beats A scenario. So maybe then you've got like a pantheon of really great players. When you have the one player in any sport who's like the absolute god, the problem is he then gets an extra advantage because he has that aura that like he's so good he'll destroy even his peers. That his peers play differently against him. Like in Faker's case, people don't want it in general like 1v1 against Faker or play certain champions against him if they're worried that he'll snowball the lane against them or he'll come in and kill them. They're constantly aware of the fact that he might make plays on me, or if I make a mistake here, he's going to commit. So few of them actually will actively try and basically play into Faker and make a play on him and kind of pressure him to any degree. So even though he's so good, he would be able to survive it in the majority of cases. A lot of people, just because he's Faker, won't even do it. What do you think, Prolly?
Yeah, he's got a gigantic mind game over people, and I think a lot of I remember when Faker first started becoming like the big thing, he would play like Orianna into Zed, and he would rush Athenes, and this was just like, shut the fuck up, dude, you're wrong. Like, there's no reason why this is a good item build. And he would win. It's because, like, yeah, he's got some kind of a play style about him that he can make these mistakes that you should punish, but because he's making these obvious mistakes, you're almost terrified to check him on it. Because you're like, maybe this is a bait, or like, how did he even step up right there? Like, he should have been going back there. Like, you're expecting this guy to be playing a certain way, but he's not. Faker plays extremely disrespectfully, and
yes, he does.
The entire time it's up to the opponent to capitalize on it. If they
don't, he also takes Ignite in stupid ways and stupid matchups. He has a history of starting Doran's Ring when he should start Cloth 5, like against. He would play Karthus into Zed and play one Doran's Ring and win lane.
Yeah, because the whole time he's like kind of daring the Zed. He's like, all right, well, you can try to make this play here, but if you don't make it here, I'm gonna go shove this lane out and back, and I'll be fine. So it's honestly, the other mid laners have to step up to Faker's level to punish this, because Faker gets away with murder all the time. And the Azir versus Zed game against Febiven, when Febiven was killing him, that's literally a game he's probably played 5 times this last year, where he's playing this way against a matchup that should kill him, and he just doesn't die because the other guy is just too scared to do anything, or too confused, or just too intimidated. But yeah, Febiven was just like, you know I'm gonna kill you, right? You have a fucking fiendish codex against a Zed. That's not right, you know? And so yeah, Vivin kills him. Like he almost killed him 3 times. One of the times he like barely got away when Bingy came. So it really is like Faker just plays super disrespectful because he knows what will kill him, and he just tries to dance on that line. And if you ever make a mistake, then yeah, you're not going to get the kill, and he gets all this disrespect play off. And I don't know. I think that's where Faker needs it. That's where Faker can improve. Is the level of disrespect he shows. He needs to adjust that based on the player he's playing against.
I mean,
I don't
imagine
think he
this.
adjusted in Fnatic series.
Okay, imagine this, Monty. Imagine I told you a year ago when Febiven was just this guy in the challenger scene who kept tilting every time he got to the relegation match and losing. Okay, a year from now, this guy will play against Faker, who will be playing Ari, and this guy will play LeBlanc and go 10-0-5. And that would be an impossible. You couldn't imagine a Western player would do this, but it happened. This happened in this series.
Yeah, he did great. I mean, you and I were always this entire season we're looking at Febiven and saying he was the best mid laner in EU, and I think he really proved it here. He not only is the best player in EU, but he really stepped up. And we can also talk about Huni over the course of the series, another rookie player who had an outstanding performance. And let me just drop this in here. Consider the difference between the rookie of the EU LCS and the rookie of the NA LCS for a second. I'm just going to say one is responsible for carrying his team and the other wasn't. And look at this performance that we saw at MSI. So Huni did great, though,
Okay.
right? He constantly made plays on the map. He was so solid in lane. His synergy with Reignover is excellent. He's obviously a world-class top laner, and he's got a lot of gas left in the tank. And he and Febiven were fantastic pickups by Fnatic.
The one thing that does scare me about Huni, because he is so good right now in this meta, I'm worried if it goes into like an absolute tank meta. Like right now, like the Maokai Nar meta, he could still play Rumble, he could still play Lissandra,
Hecarim.
and then Hecarim came out a little bit later into that. So like the tank meta didn't last that long. Like the pure tank meta wasn't really there for top. Like there was always AP tops. But I wonder what happens if AP tops are completely phased out. Like if he's still able to pick these kind of,
That's fair.
aggressive stuff and do stuff. That's going to be like the real test of his skill. Because like right now it's like, it's proven like he's the best top in this meta, I think, in terms of like solo carrying his team. Like no one else really solo carries as hard as he can. And it's just, I wonder if he can keep that up for the next meta shift. Because that's really the testament of a good player. Because the game patches every couple weeks and the meta shifts every so often.
And he's figured out to play this Cassiopeia and Vladimir top, neither of which I think are very good picks. And I think that when they weren't played against TSM, that Fnatic was exposed a little bit, especially SKT. I mean, the Cassiopeia did nothing. The top Cassiopeia did nothing to them. So he's still trying to play some non-meta stuff to get away with playing AP champs when he doesn't have that option in the top lane. But I agree with you. Obviously, we need to look at him over a longer period of time. But even so, even if he is just relegated to playing this meta and he's not going to be as strong, very few players, even when they have a meta appropriate start to their careers, can reach the same heights that he did as rookies.
Yeah, that's true.
What made this a great series, the SKT versus Fnatic series, Monty, was that on one hand, you had the Fnatic team who every game, you knew what they were going to do. You knew how they were going to play aggressively and try and get they would get the early lead every time, and half the time it worked, and then the other half of the time, SKT could overcome that somehow, and then obviously you had the fifth game where SKT like showed how you can basically punish entirely for the whole duration of the game. So
I will say that it was a close series and it was an entertaining series, but I was actually really underwhelmed by SK Telecom's performance. I thought coming in that it was going to be a 3-0, and I thought every game would look like Game 5 from SK Telecom. Just conservative play, slowly choke them out. There is a way where you can control the pacing of the game if you just play defensively, get your defensive wards up, try and wait for them to make a mistake, and that's what SKT did, and it was a very dominating game from them.
But I think that's where I think the meta is shifting away from. Like I think that's kind of the reason SKT wasn't able to beat EDG, and why Fnatic was so close to SKT was purely because I think the meta is shifting towards a lot earlier fights and a lot less control. Like it's going towards a
But
more
SKT
chaos
does take those early.
enthused.
I disagree with you. I think that I totally disagree.
Well,
with
okay,
you.
like how about this?
SKT
If
is
you watch
a
the
team that
Fnatic
likes to
games,
fight early.
the laning, not fighting, like in the sense that you're thinking, like, oh, we'll go to Dragon, we'll fight. Oh, we'll go mid, we'll fight. Fnatic ends laning phase most games by 4-manning bot or
Yep.
4-manning top. Same thing with EDG. They just 4-man some lane, get a double kill, take a turret, and then they go back to lanes and then they control some jungle and fight. SKT, on the other hand, is normally like a 1-3-1 team. And that's how laning phase ends for them. Is they'll like 1-3-1, or they'll get like a turret push, like a 1-1-3, where the bot lane's pushing and the jungler shows up and they take the turret, and then they rotate to mid and then they do that kind of thing. It's a lot less of they go for a kill and then take a turret. It's more of like they're gonna go to this area and out rotate or pressure it so they get a free turret.
But that will always be the best way to play the game, probably, unless there's some big changes.
Come on, Prolly, come on, give me it. Hit me with
I
it.
don't think it is anymore. Like I would have
Heresy,
agreed with you.
heresy. Okay, tell me what you think. Heretic,
Okay, so
Prolly, before we burn you at the stake.
A big reason why I don't think you can play the game this way anymore is because teams like Fnatic or EDG and like even AHQ kind of does it, where Yellow Star will go to ward with the intention of fighting. And a lot of teams, even H2K for a long time, it would be like, all right, well, we're in laning phase right now, and we want to take bot turret, so let's control their blue side. So let's go send jungler support, go ward up that side. And that would be the plan, to go ward up that side. And that would be always countered by a team who is looking to fight. Because the second they found us, our plan was never to fight. It was to get vision there so we could take this turret. Like, our plan was this turret down here. And I think that's why SKT, lost in a couple of areas, is because they're going, okay, like, we want to ward this area, or we want to go to take this turret. And they weren't banking on fighting. They're banking on taking an objective. While the other team is sitting there staring like, oh my God, if they cross this area, we're going to fight them. And they always kind of got caught with their pants down. Like, yeah, against like Rumble or even like LeBlanc got a lot of like picks off where, you know, against LeBlanc, if you just shove a lane, you should be good. But the thing is they would try to shove the lane against the LeBlanc, but they would be overextended and a fight would ensue. When in reality, they didn't want to fight. They just wanted to have a siege going on. So I think that's where the fighting meta is kind of coming back.
Okay, let me counter this. So what you're saying is, if you go in, there has to be what you're ignoring in that situation about deep warding with your jungle and support is there has to be other factors at play right there, including who has pressure. If you have pressure in mid and bot lane and you're sending your support in with your jungler in order to get a deep ward, then you can collapse faster than they can, even in their jungle, and you can take that fight and turn it around. If they're going to fight under those circumstances, they're making a low percentage play. And that's
thinking about talking about pressure, like a good example is like top lane, like TPs. Say the enemy is about to start hitting top turret. You're going to either say like chill out for a while, let the top laner show, because you're either going to make the top laner show top or he has to TP, right? That's normally the case. Right? Yeah. And this is where Fnatic, before the top lane wave hits, before you have time to either get them to show top or get them to TP, the TP would have already happened and the fight would have started before your pressure hit. So if your pressure already hit, then yeah, it's on you for making the mistake by, you know, letting that happen. But normally Fnatic always gets a play off before their pressure hits. Like, they'll make a TP play and then the wave hits top turret and they lose that whole top wave. So they always kind of sacrifice CS or something for some kind of kills. And I'm not saying this is not completely counter.
Here, the fighting stuff that you're talking about, and when you go into lane and you make a 4-man dive, first off, you can't make a 4-man dive because turrets exist if the enemy is properly using their jungle and support. That's on the preparation and the jungle pathing of the enemy team. That is taking advantage of something, but realistically, if you commit 4 guys to topside, that is and can be readable by the other team through wards or through just seeing recalls and understanding the playstyle of another team. You get under that turret, you have 1 fewer person there, but they can't dive you, and then you're getting experience in the other 2 lanes, and they're missing out on experience in 1 lane. I'm just saying your style, it looked impressive at this tournament because teams haven't, SK Telecom, especially Wolf, wasn't reacting very well to it. But I think if you look at the style of play up against a very good roaming support and jungler, it will fail.
Well, so that is very much based on the jungler and support being able to read the map and read how the game is flowing. And that's where I think
Fnatic versus SKT Game 5. When they had all of the wards in the jungle based off of the early Nunu Sightstone, and there was literally nothing Fnatic could do besides get choked out.
I mean, that Gragas dying at level 2 was pretty tragic. And Nunu is just like a whole other ball game.
Even if Gragas had not died at level 2, I doubt that game would have...
No specifics. X to specifics. I'm talking about this fighting style that I'm bringing up. Why I think it's effective against your style is because it is very much based around chaos. Like, things happening that don't make efficient sense. Like, yeah, letting a top wave die to get a fight. Sometimes that's not going to be that great. Maybe the top wave would have been better to get, and then you fight, you know? But this chaos thing kind of stops we want our jungler and support to go here, here, and here. They don't get to always do that anymore because they're not able to read the game, because normally you read the game by predicting. Like, all right, if I'm playing against SKT, I'm probably going to guess where they're going to go. If I play against Fnatic, I can probably guess where they're going to go. But when you first play against this style, you don't really know what they're doing because they're not playing the game you are. They're not playing the jungler support go here. They're playing the top laner just
So when you play against Unicorns of Love or Fnatic, it's like a different style that everyone's used to in the old meta?
Well, I think Unicorns of Love is obnoxious to play against. Like, I think their playstyle is chaos to the maximum potential to where they can't replicate it on a consistent basis. When they do, it works, but it's not something that they could always do. Fnatic, on the other hand, I think can create this kind of chaos pretty regularly, as long as, you know, they don't get just dumpstered in lanes or something. And, I mean, we 2-0'd UOL in the regular series, and it was always off of, like, lane advantage, and then they were never able to create chaos. When we've played Fnatic, we've won lanes before, and then they just created chaos through some other channel, and it was, like, super obnoxious through that way. It's like, well, fuck, we were winning early game. Like, how did they just get like a 4-man dive bot? Like, we had control of this game. Like, we were pressuring this and this, and they just took this, and now the game's even, you know? So I think that's just the kind of advantage to it. Once this kind of chaos play gets, like, you know, used a bit more and is easier to read, I think it'll fall off, and then the more calculated SKT way will come back.
Yes.
But I think right now, the fact
that is also what I think.
Yeah, the fact that SKT way, like, yeah, it's a style that's been played for a while now, and it's just readable. And the chaos way is not that readable, and that's why I think it's the strongest way to play.
There's a reason why it came into the equation in the first place, probably. Why was this for? It's because it's the low risks way of playing League of Legends, and I think what you're seeing is that there are certain very good players who can make plays that are being entrusted to just go even on a play that is a little bit too high risk, and that they can outplay their opponents.
No, not necessarily that, but more of like they sacrifice efficiency for chaos. Mm-hmm. That's like, instead of like, I would take risk away from it and add more, they just do less efficient plays. Because you're not expecting that less efficient play. You're expecting them to get this top wave and then fight. When in reality, they just fuck that top wave.
But the counter to that is just pretty much going to be more like extremely conservative play from the enemy team, more AD carries that have escapes in the laning phase so you can't get ganked, more mobile top laners, more conservative mid laners, more Ziggs mid, more Ezreal mid, more Nunu jungle. The more conservatively you play in terms of that early game and just emphasizing vision, the less the chaos fucks with you.
I just fundamentally hate, like, I'll never agree with playing conservative. I just think that's like, you can't grow as a team if that's like your goal, and I just think it's a really hard way to
I'm just telling you the way to deal with this. I'm not saying that you have to play like that every game, but I do think that that could be a possible reaction moving forward.
Probably, wait a minute, when you say that, you can't agree with like the idea of playing conservatively because you won't improve as a team, and I think did you even say something like you can't be the best team playing like that or something?
No, I didn't say that, but yeah, I'll say that now.
Okay, because that sounds
you're the
like
more passive team. I don't think you can be the best.
That's confusing me right there, because I think of some of the best teams of all time, and to a degree, like, okay, a most recent one, Samsung Blue, they were a very conservative team. EDG, the old one, They were very conservative, all Chinese one, very conservative teams. Even WE to a degree back in the day.
Well,
SK
don't confuse
Telecom
this.
S.
So okay, these are different eras. Okay, that's true.
Don't confuse the conservative with
Okay.
how you play like the first 6, 7, 10 minutes of the game. That's like that. If you if you're playing a fucking mid lane Ziggs, like you got to be conservative playing against an assassin. That's completely understandable.
Okay.
I'm talking about moving forward, come like the 10 to 15 minute mark. That's when you got to kill a turret or take a dragon. That's when like team play needs to kick in. And if your team play revolves around, we're gonna hold out, it better be like, okay, like we hit a huge power spike at 25 minutes. Let's give up the first 2 drakes. That's like the most conservative I think you can play in this game and still win. But if you're not playing like, the 25-minute power spike game and you're like, we'll go for 35-minute power spike, 30-minute, I think you'll just lose by then.
See, what's confusing me is that is what EDG did. They give up dragons and then they go for the 25-minute power spike and they win the game.
I think that's the only case where you can play conservative. But that's like.
So essentially, are you actually arguing that it's better to dive a tower, get the kill, then get the tower, than to just try and get a tower for free without a kill? I'm confused by this part of the philosophy. To you, it seems to be better to dive a tower, kill the guy there, then take the tower, than try and find scenarios where you rotate and take a tower while no one's killing you.
I think that's if you know how to play that style, I think it's the best. If you're like
Monty,
SKT,
wait
I
a
think
minute.
it's bad. If
I'm
it's
confused.
SKT, I think you got to keep doing the rotations and keep everyone on your team alive. If you're Fnatic, like let Huni die 3 times in a row if he gets 3 kills for it. I think that's super worth it to accelerate the game, let your top laner get ahead of other people while still, technically feeding.
Okay, I think I understand the difference then. Essentially, are you trying to say this, Prolly? Like you're saying, that key thing you said there was accelerate the game. So the idea is it's okay to give up some kills, as long deaths basically, as long as like your good players, your star player, your carries get kills themselves and get ahead in that sense. So are you trying to suggest that if you do that, then the games when you do get ahead, you're going to be so far ahead, you're like definitely going to win because you're going to totally bully the whole game and all your stars are going to have all the kills and be super far ahead, as opposed to the conservative style, basically you have to play perfectly almost. You get very small advantages, and so you could fuck that up 30 minutes in with one small wrong fight. Is that the philosophy? I don't know.
If you get the kills early, and this is the thing, is that if you are very confident that all of your players are better than the opposition, and this is to a certain degree how this style works, is saying, well, our players are just individually better, or we're just better at team fighting. So if you just keep skirmishing over and over and over again under relatively equal terms, if you have the better players, you're going to come out a little bit more on top every time, and that's going to snowball into a win.
Like basically,
it's a viable way. It's a viable way to play the game, but it is predicated on the fact that your players are better.
Like, here's the thing. If you're for Prolly's way, if you're like Najin Sword with Macnoon, or you're like Samsung White, the one that won Worlds, maybe this can work if you really do have the best players at those positions and they're really aggressive players. But what I can't understand is, as a general philosophy for all teams, how is this going to be a good approach, Prolly?
Exactly.
For a team like Gambit to use over playing the right way, as Monty says.
No, see, I think you have to learn the SKT way before you can expand. Kind of like, I think the SKT way to play is like the very
So it's like you have to learn the rules and then you can learn when you can break them.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of. Like it's.
No.
I mean, okay. Think about mid lane. Like if you play mid lane, if you don't know how to CS.
I refuse to believe that this is some sort of Picasso situation where he learned to paint the right way.
I can't believe he even just said
cubism,
that. Okay.
And then invented cubism.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is not cubism. Fuck you for even saying that.
Prolly, we just got some of the greatest quotables ever there. He refuses to believe this is a Picasso situation, and fuck cubism, okay? So respond to that, Prolly.
Hey, man.
No, not
Guernica.
cubism.
I have a poster of Guernica, man. Picasso's the man.
Cubism was very innovative. I enjoy Picasso's paintings. I'm saying fuck you for saying cubism is shit by basically making the same inference.
Right.
This is not cubism. This is not League of Legends cubism.
This whole segment right here is killing me. Prolly, tell me about the game again. Let's get out of cubism.
2 arguments. Bring it on. I'm fucking Dyrus here, bitches. All right.
Come on, explain it to me.
I can't. What were we talking about again? League of Legends?
You were saying how you think you have to initially play the SKT way to then move on to this.
So it's kind of like, all right, I'll equate it
Because
to
all those
mid-lane.
fucking rookies on Fnatic played the SKT way before. Fuck you, man.
They had to have an idea of how to play it. No, if you watch watch the Fnatic games. They do 1-3-1. Like in the third game against SKT, they actually fucked up their 1-3-1, and that was like the sole reason they lost that game, the Zed Cassiopeia one. They just 1-3-1 and they made it incorrect. But the games they did win, they had good 1-3-1s. Like they literally would just take free turrets or dive free turrets with like 4 people. So they knew how to play that way. They just don't want to go that pace because the SKT pace is a lot slower than the Fnatic way.
Okay, I look at that comp in Game 3, and I see a very narrow window for victory for Fnatic with this Cassiopeia and the Zed, even though Zed got a couple kills. You have an extraordinarily tight timing that you have to take a massive gold advantage. Otherwise, you just get crushed in the late game by the composition from
Well, they actually
SK
had a
Telecom.
gigantic advantage.
I see their strategy.
I had it written down. At 19 minutes, they had 3 turrets to 0 turrets. And then 8 minutes later, 19 minutes to 27 minutes, the turrets became tied, SKT got a dragon, and then they lost a fight right there.
It's almost like they had a very. It's almost like they had a very limited timing window, and you can say they had 0 turrets, but their turrets were also chipped during that period. So those turrets were about to go down.
Your camera's... Oh, it's back on. Okay.
Probably. I watched that game, I think, last night, and Fnatic really, like, they did this, like, weird, like, they wanted to take Baron, but they got too scared to take Baron thing, where that lasted, like, 2 or 3 minutes out of this 8-minute window where they could have just snowballed the game and won. Because, yeah, Azir had Morelos to, like, a Bork, Yomu, Zed.
I'm just saying that with that advantage, you still have a very, very small chance of winning. That's
I think you
my
have a
opinion.
bigger than you think. I think it's bigger.
But in this tournament, Prolly, Fnatic only won 2 games out of 5 against SK Telecom. EDG lost to SK with EasyHoon in the group stage. I mean, it's not like this. It's not like this one style won every game in the tournament, you know.
Yeah.
In fact, it lost more.
And
than
then
it won.
Fnatic had that game where they were super far ahead from this style, and then did nothing with it.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the style is kind of China EU. I mean, Fnatic is honestly the only team who really plays to the extent Fnatic does. I guess it's like super obvious, but like any EU team won't play as, yeah, they won't like TP for everything, kind of like Fnatic does. Like they play a lot more of a slow-paced game, kind of like SKT. So Fnatic is more of an outlier there, but I think that's the correct way to play against these other teams. It could be the correct way to play against the, you know, SKT copies because they aren't as good as SKT, and maybe the SKT is the counter to it. But this is also a rookie team. Say Fnatic hones their skills, and the next year, and they come back to SKT, and SKT is still playing the same way. That's when I want to see if the Fnatic way can now beat it. Now that they're no longer rookies, and they've had, you know, an entire year to practice this style instead of developing the style over half a split.
And let me tell you the counterpoint to this is just in Korea since Cinderhulk, right? The only team that plays this kind of style that we're talking about right now that we saw from teams like EDG and Fnatic is KT Rolster, right? And I will admit that it was surprising, and KT did well post Cinderhulk with that style. In fact, they beat the GE Tigers, first team to do that in a best of 3. They took SK Telecom to 3 games in the best of 3. They barely missed out on the playoffs. They beat Gen Air, who made the playoffs. So I'm not saying that this style is entirely without merit or that it can't get you wins. I'm saying that if I took, you know, over the course of this tournament, SK Telecom, they won more games than they lost, even though they didn't even win the tournament. And it seemed like, and you could also say, well, TSM plays that more controlled style, and they got totally dumpstered. So there's that aspect of it too. But I think that SK Telecom's kind of more systematic success. And if you asked me, would I rather bet on a team that plays like SK Telecom or a team that played like EDG at this tournament? I would take SK Telecom every time because I think the play style itself simply has a higher percentage chance of success.
Yeah, but I also think that if you don't do the correct pick and ban, you're going to lose against that style, like very quickly.
So what would the qualifying aspects be to that? Probably what would make you lose if you do what would you do wrong in pick and ban that would make you be very likely to lose against that style?
Let's see. Hold on, let me find out. I can't remember our pick and ban against Fnatic, but I think like we honestly just didn't have enough practice to do a full best of 5. Like that actually is a lot of like mental stress to play 5 full games and like play them well. But I think the 5 games, if we played them correctly, it would be something like we're going for the 25-minute power spike and we're giving up, the first 2 Drakes. We're lane swapping and we're giving up the first 2 Drakes.
And frankly, probably, it's my opinion that you guys should have 3-0'd Fnatic in your series.
Yeah.
And you're giving a lot of props to Fnatic here, but that was in the middle. I mean, who knew that Fnatic was going to come out with some of these great drafts over the course of this tournament and do so well, right? Because all we saw in the EU playoffs really was them playing this ridiculously bad top Smite Lee Sin, where you should have beaten them.
Yeah. I don't know how that second game was...
I'm sorry. You play the more calculated style. You should. I still think, and maybe they would have stopped playing Lee Sin if you had beat them 2 games in a row, probably, right? But I think that was H2K's series to lose, frankly, with 3 games of top Smite Lee Sin. And then they played the Unicorns of Love final, which no one thinks was a good series.
No.
So...
But no, like...
Now, props to them that they came up and played much better than we had seen them in the past, and they came up with new strategies. And especially against TSM, that Cassio top was extremely effective because of what TSM is. So I was very impressed with them. I'm still very impressed with them. I think they're a good team. I'm really excited to see what happens with them when they're not rookies. But I'm just saying H2K plays that more controlled style, and you nearly ended their run in the semis of EU.
Is that a good thing?
Yes. So I think H2K is a good team.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
I'm just making a point here about what you're saying about this style when your team doesn't even play this style.
The thing is, I actually just think that Prolly's problem is he's overstated it by making that hyperbolic statement at the beginning that like this is like the correct way to play and it will beat the other style. You should play this way and the best. That's his problem. Both styles have merits. Okay, I think his problem is by making that statement, he's made it sound as though this is actually now the correct way to play. Like, whereas actually, my kind of point about how many losses this style's accrued over Fnatic's games and all the tournaments is that it shows that for its high risk, the high reward that goes along with it has the high risk as well. Like you will actually lose a lot of games doing this.
It's high risk, medium reward. Where if you get the medium reward, then if your players are good enough to snowball, and because of what we've been talking about with the Cinderhulk meta and the current itemization, it does work.
I would put it at like a 55-45 to the SKT play.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's like 80-20 some like godlike shit, but I think it has an advantage over the SKT play style.
What? 55 to the SKT's play style?
No, he meant to his style.
Oh, you mean the more chaotic play? No, I don't.
The chaotic style has the 55, right? Probably.
Thing is really underplayed because things like DOL versus Fnatic, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not a representation.
I don't even know what that was.
Probably, it sounds like apparently in your world, this style has only ever been used in like 4 games ever. Like, what fucking examples do you have right now? We've had 2 tournaments.
It is. Our games against SK were a bit like that.
Bro, didn't Fnatic go but full 5 games in every series they've played now?
So, you hating?
No, I'm showing that it doesn't matter what level of opponent, they still manage to lose even to those level of opponents. They can win games of SK Telecom, great. They can also lose games to Unicorns of Love.
Yeah, well, I think SKT is just a better team.
Oh, I know what he's doing, Monty.
So
he's doing the old hotshot GG wicked, like, well, I didn't play it out correctly. Like, if we'd have played it out correctly, our style, then we wouldn't have lost that game. But here's the problem, Prolly. Monty can say that about his style every time as well. Like, well, if you played out our conservative style properly and always rotate properly, then we would have won. It's like, you can't both fucking take it away like that. Like, you have to look at the overall, every game.
Like,
okay.
I'm not right, you're not fucking right. We're literally just like,
no, I'm
this
right.
is what I think.
Yeah, okay. You misunderstand the situation.
Motherfucker.
Okay. Well, we'll get into that in a minute, probably, because now we're going to talk about SK Telecom. So first and foremost, I want to talk about this, because obviously the main series for SK Telecom is the final here. Now, in the group stage, they played EDG, and this was the one game, Monty, that they put easyHoon in against a top team, and they won quite easily, actually. This was a game where I think he played... Was this the one where he played Vladimir?
He played Vlad, yes.
Yeah, and he was very good in this game. Now, here's my problem. In the final, Coma chose to use easyHoon for the first 3 games. Now, I'm sorry. Yes, EDG won this tournament. Yes, EDG was the best team in terms of actual performance at this tournament. But I will forever put an asterisk next to that tournament, not for EDG's fault, but for Coma's fault, in as much as he played the best player in the world in 2 games out of a best of 5. Like, I will always think, you fucked that up, Coma. Like, you fucked this series up.
Okay,
tell me why I didn't.
I actually going to disagree with you. I think that in this meta, that it makes sense that he would play Easy Hoon, at least start Easy Hoon against EDG.
So he plays the first game, remember, and he wins the first game like Cassiopeia. Great. Yes. Now let's go to game 2. You remember what happened in game 2? Mm-hmm. He put Easy Hoon onto Orianna. I wonder if there's a player on SK Telecom who's really good on Orianna. Nope, guess I'll just have to put Easy Hoon on it.
You know, it's not so simple because you don't necessarily know how the pick and ban are going to go. But let me think about what Coma's mindset would have been going into this game. So you know that Pawn doesn't have that much experience on Cassiopeia or Azir, right? And you are in a situation where you have this player who is arguably the best Cassiopeia, the best Azir, and the best Ziggs player in the world coming into this match.
Okay. And these are not Ziggs. Come on, not Ziggs.
Okay, all right. Well, you just take that crown with you into your retired pro player grave. But anyway, Easy Hoon, we know he hasn't played Ziggs, but we know he's a very good Ziggs player because he certainly did it a lot last year. And so you come into this, and you also understand that Orianna is a good matchup for Orianna versus Cassiopeia. And you'll also remember that was the game where SK Telecom stupidly died 3 times at level 1 and still almost won that game.
Okay.
And Easy Hoon won the matchup because he got a good gank from Marin, who came mid, even though Cassiopeia had 3 assists. So he won the Cassiopeia matchup into Orianna and the Orianna matchup into Cassiopeia, even though Cassie had 3 assists at level 1.
Okay, so there's game 1, there's game 2. Now game 3, now we'll put Easy Hoon on Lulu. I don't remember hearing Lulu in that list you were just talking about there, Monty.
Lulu, no, he's played a lot of Lulu this season.
No, I don't remember hearing you say that he was the best Lulu player in the world.
I think Faker's probably a little better.
So why is Easy Hoon in game 3 when they've just lost game 2?
I don't understand that. If they wanted to play this comp, the Bang, Sivir, or Lucian with Lulu mid comp, Faker's played in all of those games as Lulu. When they have run this comp, it has been Faker play.
You don't think that's a huge... You've just lost a best of 3 by 1 game. You've played Easy Hoon in 3.
But I think that if you look at game 2 and you're SK Telecom, you're like, we nearly won that game when we died 3 times at level 1. They nearly made a comeback. And
remember that guy Pawn, whose Azir isn't very good, which is true. In past, it wasn't that great.
It hasn't been.
Oh, in this game, he only went 10-0-8.
Yeah, he played very well in this game. And I think
honestly, that was a pick ban. I think that was just a problem. I think Lulu was either... I think it had to have been a mispick. Because they've blind picked Azir before, and it's fine. And then Edward Gaming banned Cassio. So it really seemed like they should have taken like Sivir Azir in that second rotation, and they would have been fine.
I think SKT was not worried about Pawn's Azir up until this point. And Pawn did play a very good Azir in that game.
Like even regardless of if Pawn played it or not, Azir is going to do a lot more than Lulu,
right?
Especially or for Easy Hoon to play it.
Maybe they were rattled by the Azir blind pick against Fnatic, where Faker died a couple times. But the fact is Pawn is not a Zed player. You know, that's not what a champion that we think of when we think about Pawn. So you don't have to worry about that bad matchup as much either. So I agree with you. I think that the Lulu pick it telegraphed a lot because it was just SK Telecom going back to a comfort comp. And EDG was prepared to deal with that. So I think I agree with you. I think the Azir would have been a better pick there.
And in these 2 games that you've just lost in a row, you've given Deft Jinx in both games.
I think that was definitely a mistake. I think they should have banned Jinx right from the get-go for several reasons. Koreans are not used to playing against Jinx because nobody really plays it in Korea, and they're certainly not used to a champion that Deft is, 17-0 on now or whatever it is. So he has been an extraordinary Jinx player all season, and EDG is so good at snowballing Jinx, and they love to tower dive and lane swaps with Jinx, which is what we saw. And Jinx is actually a relatively low-risk tower dive because as soon as she gets the kill, even if she's taking a hit from the turret, her passive just gets her out of there so she can't die.
And in these first 3 games, Monty, so we have EasyHoon on the team. In these first 3 games, Marion was crap. He was okay on that first Maokai. That was okay. Okay. These other 2 games...
Really well. He did really well on Maokai. That's why they kept taking it away.
Then he played Rumble twice, and how was that? How are you enjoying those games, mate?
You know what I really liked about EDG was after SKT won game 1 with the Maokai and the Gragas and the Annie, EDG immediately took all those champions away in the drafting game 2. I think EDG did a magnificent job of drafting over this series. I was very impressed by them. So they immediately in game 2 took all those champions away and said, well, what are you going to do against us now?
I actually think this tournament, Monty, has kind of removed any doubt I had in the opinion that I think Marin's well overrated by you. Like, you've made it sound like he's the best top player in the world, dude. He was crap in this final. And this tournament overall, like in this tournament, he was shown up by Koro. Koro's a great hybrid player who can do both styles. He can just be that zoning player. He can be the really strong carry player, even on certain champions, Hecarim, etc. And the other thing is, go even beyond them. Listen, you might think this is a ridiculous statement, but even in spite of the LCK finals, I still think Smeb is better than Marin. I think Acorn is better than Marin.
No, I think Smeb is better than Marin too.
To me, these 3 players, Acorn, Smeb, and Koro, they're the top 3. They're like their own group. And then Marin's just on the outside looking in, but he's not in that group to me.
That's fair.
Because he has certain champions he's really good at, like his Gnar can be very good, but he's not actually that strong a carry.
I definitely would have always agreed with you that Smeb was the better top laner. I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. So,
but okay, moving forwards, so they finally bring in Faker. Faker comes in for Game 4 and Game 5. Now, before we get into Game 4, Monty, here's one of the reasons why I think it's ridiculous not to have Faker in. Okay, so let's go with your logic, okay? Are you ready? Your logic was, EasyHoon's better in this meta, and his champion pool's better in this meta. Okay, by that logic, never put Faker in. You can now never put Faker in, Monty. It's now logically incorrect to ever insert Faker. So why insert Faker?
Because I think that when they realized that Pawn could play some of these champions like Azir to a very high level and a very high standard, that they wanted to switch up their tactics and start running with some more Faker-style champions to make it more difficult to pick and ban.
So here's what's crazy about this situation. Let me explain the logic to you. I actually think that this is such a fuck-up by Koma, the way he keeps using EasyHoon all the time. But Faker's actually doing him the biggest favour ever, because any normal godlike player, Monty, like any of the old great players who were the best at their position, but weren't like Faker, who's just better than everyone, they are still human. They can't just perform like this and be 10 out of 10 every game. They need a full best of 5 where they can have one game that's not that good, one game they pick a champion that doesn't work and they go, right, I'll adapt next game. Faker's required to come in when they're at elimination and just instantly win the game, otherwise it's over. And he does. That's the sick thing. So Faker being the best player ever literally helps his idiot coach who keeps not playing him not look like a fucking moron for not playing the best player in the world.
It's pretty nice job security. Do you wish you had that, probably?
Huh? What? What are we talking about?
So anyway, Faker comes in the game and Pawn picks Azir again, and Faker plays Kassadin and Styles.
Which is a great matchup. Which is a great matchup for Kassadin. Really good matchup for Kassadin.
So, I mean, you can obviously go over the walls.
Pawn played that matchup really bad early.
In what sense?
While you're shoving with Azir, your entire goal, like as standard as it sounds, is get your harass off after the Q's down. And so many times he would W auto Faker, and Faker would Q him, and then boom, Faker gets 80 damage and then absorbs 50 of it. So this happened like 3 or 4 times. Then like level 4, it pans over to mid, and Pawn's like 20% HP, no health, no mana, and Faker's fine farming under turret. And it's like the matchup isn't that one-sided without any jungle intervention. It's not that bad. It does get bad later, for sure. But 1 through 6 should not be that terrible for Azir, to where it's like he has to back, he has to get cover. That should be a salvageable lane.
Well, it's also that in this particular game, that very aggressive playstyle was really punished here. And there wasn't really any help because Coral was just busy feeding his ass off in the top lane, and SKT was just diving him over and over and over again. And you can't dive Alistar Ezreal, so there wasn't, I think SKT really had a good read in terms of picks and bans of what they wanted to do in this game. They played super conservative picks, Alistar, Ezreal, these kinds of champions. And one of the big mysteries, I told you we get this later, is Mako played great this tournament, right? Awesome player. Big plays, great champion, big champion pool. But one thing that people overlook about Mako is that when Mako plays disengaged champions, when he has to play Janna, he's not very good. He's not. So he's, right now for me, Mako is a player who's super good at one play style. But if we take Wolf, who definitely had an off tournament, we'll get to game 5 where he had some big problems. But one of the big mysteries for me is why the hell doesn't SK Telecom play Janna against this play style where they try and come in, especially in game 5, which we'll get to, and they try and flank you like, well, Monsoon, there's your problem solved.
I don't know, like, I tried really hard not to, when I was watching MSI, not to be like super elitist, because I didn't agree with the Rek'Sai being as high priority as it was, and I didn't agree with the meta of like Alistar, Nautilus, and
where the fuck was the Janna in this tournament?
Yeah,
Janna is
I was really confused about
champion
that.
You want to deal with Hecarim coming at your face at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Just fucking play Janna. She's the champion that you want to deal with tower dives. Just play Janna.
Not to mention, like, Janna Sivir is fucking obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like, that's basically a bot lane that you never have to gank for, you never have to look at, and it'll probably win in CS and probably take turret. So,
and is very safe. Is very safe against taking turrets too,
really
because you can always just shield your turret.
Monty, tell me again what that list was that you said of the players that. So it was Azihoon. You said is the best in the world on. Was it Azir, Cassiopeia, and Ziggs? Were those the 3?
We haven't seen his Ziggs in a long time. He never even played it.
But those were the 3 that you outlined. Okay,
I think these are picks that he is better on than Faker at the very
Okay, here's the problem. So in game 1, EDG banned Nunu, Rek'Sai, Alistar. In game 2, EDG banned Kalista, Alistar, Azir. In game 3, EDG banned Kalista, Cassiopeia, Urgot. So the whole time he can be playing Ziggs, he can be playing sometime, not Cassiopeia always, but there's always 2 of those 3 available, and he's not playing in them in 2 of the games.
I know. I disagree with the pick and ban phase. I think Ziggs is another champion that they can turtle with, and if EDG tries to dive, they just throw Ziggs ults onto the tower dives and maybe come away with an even trade.
What do you think, Prolly?
I don't like the way they played Easyhoon.
Because I'm not against the concept that he might be the best at that style, but he didn't play that style. He didn't play those champions.
I agree.
I think if
So
they're
to me, why have him in the game, Well,
like, if they're comfortable playing, like, if they think Easyhoon early is good, I think it's fine. But after the second game, I think it became super not fine. Like, the second they lost, it was really obvious that EDG they changed your pick ban purely to focus on mid lane, like around the Azir and Cassiopeia. And in game 3, they even did it. So they had an idea of how to play against Easyhoon. And it looks like they were fine purple side and blue side. But against Faker, the only strat they had was on purple side, they do this like super lame Morgana Sivir comp. So
yeah.
If say Faker was put in earlier.
I want to talk about Kassadin. Okay.
Well, if Faker was put in earlier in the series, I just want to say, like, if Faker was put in earlier in the series, they would have flushed out this strat, the like anti-LeBlanc strat.
Yep.
And then it would have been countered. But the thing is they had this strat the whole time, and when they swapped the mid laners, the first 3 games they're playing anti-Easyhoon. 4th game, they don't know what the fuck to do. They lose to Faker. And then 5th game, they're like, oh yeah, we got this one playstyle against Faker. And it worked out.
And remember, Monty, that was supposed to be the benefit of having Easyhoon, was that you could keep them off their toe, like keep them on their toes rather, like they'd have to keep wondering what we're going to do next. But if anything, it fucked SKT in the end.
Yeah, I had to actually.
Because they couldn't adapt to the series,
Yeah.
So let me talk about the Kassadin pick, because this is very interesting as well. And I don't think that people give SKT enough credit for this. And this is another reason why having Faker in the game is good. No one in Korea has ever played new Kassadin. It's been all over China. It was one of Pon's preferred picks.
He used it in
playoffs.
LPL.
Yep. Used it in the LPL playoffs a ton. A bunch of the Chinese teams have used it. We've seen it in Europe a lot. it is not something that they had any reason to expect that Faker was going to pull out.
I mean, even like old Kassadin, I remember before he got to 100% pick ban everywhere, Korea like still was really resistant to it because you just play Zed into it or you play Fizz into it and you deal with it fine. And it wasn't really a problem for Korea, so it never became too big of a thing. I remember for a while.
No. You're thinking there was a one period in time where there was true, and then there was the other period in time where it was always 100% pick ban in Korea, and other regions didn't think that it was a big deal. So it's kind of gone both ways.
It was right before that. Right. Before it was 100% pick ban in Korea, it was not played in Korea, but still played around the world, and then it swapped. Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying that this is something that Faker had up his sleeve for this matchup. And I think that once they saw that in Game 3 that Pawn was going to play the Azir, that's when you're like, okay, well, we have this planned for you, just special for you. You're not going to expect this. Here's the Kassadin, deal with it. And he didn't deal with it very well. And then as we move into talking about Game 5, which was really, bad for a lot of reasons. Wolf picks Nautilus. Wolf has never played Nautilus competitively up until Game 5 of the MSI Finals. Yeah, great choice there. Wolf also plays it poorly, and I think no matter what pick Wolf was on, that would have not gone well. But big props to EDG for having this plan. But before people are shitting too badly on Faker over this. First off, Faker played about as well as you could on a LeBlanc in that situation. And second off, show me another game in League of Legends history where an entire team had to play around one player's one champion. It's crazy that EDG even had to have a game plan for one champion played by one player that they didn't even know if he would be in the best of 5.
And it revolved around the Morgana having to be able to survive the laning phase.
Which isn't too hard, honestly, but, And to EDG's credit, it was a great plan. Double spell shields, super tanky. The Alistar they picked up, like, at the end of the day, Faker just has nobody to kill. Right?
Was there anything he could have done here, Prolly?
I think,
he still did all right, considering the whole thing was based against him.
But this is really, in my opinion, a really, really nice split push Faker game, where you either 1-3-1 or 4-1, and then have a slow push lane, and LeBlanc just splits all the way up. She can chunk out Morgana later on in the game. Yeah, Morgana Black Shield's like super lame and like cock blocks you really hard, but eventually on LeBlanc, when you get like Rabadon's Void, Morello's 3 items, your QR is going to do half her health. And then it's going to be on like a 25-second cooldown. So I think Faker could have done some kind of split push, and then hope and pray the fucking Gnar Urgot can survive the turret push.
With this. So I feel the same way about this game that I did about that Fnatic versus SKT Game 3. I'm like, yes, there is a way they could have won, but because the deck is so hugely stacked against them in terms of pick ban, in terms of team composition, that it is extraordinarily unlikely for them to win.
Well, right? I don't think the bot lane should have gone the way it did.
That's also true.
Wolf got dumpstered in the Roam, whatever the fuck he was doing, and then Bang got free dumpstered, and it was like, well, if you're playing LeBlanc and your side lanes are losing that hard, like, it's going to be impossible to kill a fed Sivir as LeBlanc. Like, the Ricochet is going to kill you in a team fight, even though you're not next to Sivir, and then Spell Shield's like another cock block, so it's like, I don't know, I think the comp would have been okay against Faker, but if side lanes did better, I think SKT had a lot better chance in that game. Like,
of course,
but Faker was the only lane who did well.
Still, and they would have outscaled, because literally at the end of the day, if that game goes to 45 minutes, there's no damage from EDG. I mean, late game solo lane Morgana is one of the shittiest things in the universe.
Let's talk about Eve, because I can't rationalize it still.
Eve was an interesting pick. I think Eve is always relevant because she changes the way the game is played. And I think that it can spook your opponents. I think it's more of a mind game than anything. That said, I think Eve, it could have been anything this game, and the Eve was irrelevant.
Here's the reasoning that I was given by Froscorian and Kelsey. They say that the reason for picking Eve, aside from the fact that Clearlove has played it tons of times in his career in like clutch games and all that bullshit, is that the logic was since Bengi's Nunu is going to try and counter jungle all the time. To a degree, you can mindfuck the Nunu to a degree,
Yes,
because
you
unless
can.
he literally wards all your camps, he's never quite sure where you are. He's never quite sure where you're going to go and gank. So there's a degree to which you can at least not make him as... He's not going to be as strident, you know.
Yeah,
Yes.
I guess Sightstone's less effective.
Yeah, that's why Eve is always relevant, even when she doesn't have that much damage or do that much, because it can mess with the laning phase and mess with your head. But that's all Eve did. It wasn't like Eve did more by being Eve in some of these team fights.
Yeah, I think Eve was honestly just like a one-off. Like, if this was
Yeah.
the first game of the series and they won this, they wouldn't play her for the other 4 games.
But that said, if Eve had gotten behind in this game, Clearlove would have looked like a fucking idiot for picking
Yeah.
him. It did happen to go well, but this was a pretty risky pick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, okay, beyond Faker's pick in this game. By the way, actually, on the Faker topic, you kind of referenced it before, but what's funny is when I saw the way this game played out, it actually made me think of the game where he played Ahri against Fnatic. And the whole reason he couldn't do anything in that game is because the whole time, Fnatic's whole team fighting was based around like getting the Urgot to swap Faker out. So Faker had to use all the Spirit Rushes to get out of the fight and leave the fight, and the fight had to end, or SKT would lose the fight. So in this scenario, this comp, part of the problem is Faker has to get the fuck out every single time he's in, and the Morgana presses R. You know, there's all sorts of shit can happen to him. He can't just attack. He can't just blow up the AD carry. I mean, is this like in the future? Will people try approaches like this against Faker? Do you think is this like the approach that you take against him?
No.
This is only one
I
off.
think it's an approach against LeBlanc. Like,
Yes,
a lot of
it's an
AoE
approach.
damage is really good against LeBlanc.
But at the end of the day, you have to sit there and ask yourself, isn't it just easier to ban LeBlanc than hope that our mid laner can play Morgana up to Pawn's level? Because Pawn played a great Morgana. No doubt about that. His Morgana was amazing. But personally, I'd just rather fucking ban a LeBlanc than...
Well, I think if you're going with the style where it's like, okay, if we can get Maokai Sivir in our first rotational purple side, then let's give him LeBlanc, because those are 2 really, really good picks against LeBlanc. And then all you have to do is pick a surviving mid lane. Like, Pawn was like 30 CS down or something, because he didn't need a win lane. He literally just had to not feed, and that's what he did. And then it came to grouping phase, and
Yep.
he was way more worth it. I feel like an Orianna could fit there. Maybe Lulu. Like, a lot of champions could fit there as long as you're having these top laners who do well against LeBlanc in team fights, and AD carries who do well against LeBlanc in team fights as well. Like,
And even the support, the Alistar. There's no way
Yeah,
you're
even
blowing out Alistar. So it was a great strategy from EDG. I mean, EDG, this finals was so exciting. You could really see how the series played out. It's the first time we've ever in Riot International competition history that we've had a 5-game final. It was a great tournament. MSI was a great event. And I'm really happy that this happens, because finally, for once, Worlds isn't going to be super boring like it has been for the past 2 years. That's my hope.
Monty, in this final game, it's okay for everyone to focus on Faker, but beyond Faker, there's other players in the server who are supposed to be able to do things okay. So if I tell you that in pick ban phase, SK Telecom first picks Urgot, explain that to me. 5th game, deciding match of the grand final, first pick Urgot.
I think Urgot's a great pick here. I don't think Urgot was the problem.
So what did Urgot do in this game, mate?
Well, Bang played poorly, but I think Urgot, especially against the kind of tower dives that we saw coming in from EDG, that the tankiness and the ability for Urgot to reverse those tower dives is quite strong. I understand why they first.
But what the fuck's Urgot going to do in lane against Sivir?
I mean, it's not a terrible matchup.
You know what? I think Urgot is the most overrated champion in this meta right now. You know how many fucking games I've
can
seen
hear
lost
your anger.
by
I can
Urgot
see the fire.
as AD carry? Dude, even the best AD carries in the world, Deft, he's playing it and he's losing like half the time. This is a fucking overrated as fuck champion. You either totally dumpster and look like a genius, or you shit the bed. There's no middle ground with this champion. You
I
either
think he's
abuse
much
the
better
fuck
mid.
out of it, rape them under the fucking tower with those Qs, or you just don't do anything in the game. Eventually you find out like, oh, that's right, I don't have any damage, like it's over.
I think that Maokai was the better first pick.
Also, this motherfucker's going around popping black shields on everyone, and we've got spell shields. We could probably use some damage that goes through that shit. Oh, no, we've got Urgot. Never mind. Game over, lads. I guess we just can't do damage.
No, I think Maokai was the better first pick in this scenario.
I'm not sold on Urgot AD carry still as like super priority. I see it being viable, but not first pick. And
it's the fact that people pick it like so high, like you're saying here. People pick it as though it was OP. People pick it like players who are gods on other champions are like, gotta get that Urgot. Oh my god, Urgot's up first pick. Like, no, if you have a very specialized situation, you want to pick it and do it. But I've seen so many playoff games in EU, every single region lost on Urgot now. It's unreal.
Yeah,
I agree.
Do you actually know why, Monty?
Why they prioritize it so much?
Yeah, or like, why is it like leaps and bounds?
It's a very conservative pick that you don't have to take a lot of risk to seriously win your lane, and it's difficult to tower dive. And
you say that, but these motherfuckers aren't winning their lane, dude. People aren't winning it so often, it's unreal. Like, that's the thing. Everyone thinks, right, if you get Urgot, you can just, like, max range, attack them and abuse them, and they can't do anything. So you're going to win lane, and then everyone just, like, it's like everyone fantasizes about that one time. Like, it's like walking past the fucking girls' bathroom one day, hoping that the windows open a crack, and you might get to look in and see some amazing sight as a teenage boy. It's not very often it's going to happen, mate, so it's not worth basing your whole life on. Don't take a detour out of...
I'm not arguing with you here. I think what they should have done, honestly, is taken...
You probably wanted to know where that was going, that analogy, didn't you?
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Here's where it was going, probably. I'm just saying, the other thing that people are obsessed with on Urgot is that one time in the scrim where you got the position change right onto their carry just as he was about to do some shit, and then you all just jump on his fucking head as 5 men and you kill him. You're like, yeah, oh, it's the best champion ever. But every time you don't do that, you look like a fucking moron and you get your head panned in, because that's like, that ultimate's only good for that one thing.
Because I mean, in EU and I think in NA also, they had it as a flex pick where they played at mid and AD carry. So that's where I could see a lot more value.
TSM never played at AD carry. Bullshit.
Okay, well maybe it's just EU then. Because I know EU played at AD carry and mid lane. Maybe not in LCS, but in scrims that was like a very common thing where it was always a flex pick.
So anyway, can we talk about how this draft I think should have gone?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that just given the way that the Maokai priority had played out over the series, you just fucking take Maokai first pick right there. And then if Deft plays Sivir, you play Lucian, because Bang's very good at winning the Lucian into Sivir matchup. And then why the hell is Wolf playing Nautilus for the first time competitively in Game 5 of these finals?
And this is his last pick. This is his last pick at this point in time.
Yes. Just take the Annie or take the Janna. Why isn't the Janna being played?
You know the worst thing of it as well, Monty, is that, okay, so EDG had last pick. I would understand if he picks Nautilus here, because he naively thinks Morgana's a flex pick, but they've already picked the support. They already picked Alistair within the first wave, so there's only the jungler left. So there's no way Morgana's going jungle, therefore, like, where's the logic on this last pick? I sometimes wonder why people will do that. Like I've always said, that's when you regret, when you pick a champion you're not even good on and then you lose on it. Like you'd much rather at least have one that it's a comfort champion, and then if you lose you can go, well, I picked it because like, you know, I'm comfortable in it, I know what the limits of the champion are. You don't ever want to pick some shit you don't even play and then lose the fucking last game of the final.
Okay, so I think why they picked this, like this is looking at the comp and going like, okay, I don't like it. But in a world where I
like it.
You
put Nautilus into... You know the double spell shield's already there. You already have LeBlanc in a double spell shield. Please do not pick Nautilus with his easily shieldable ult into double spell shield too. It's fucking awful.
Yeah, I already said I don't think it's good. But this is the Prolly this is alternate Prolly. You know, sideshow Prolly. I think it's because the team comp that they wanted to go for, without looking at the whole Morgana fucks their whole team up, is you pick 4 tanks and 1 LeBlanc. And there's no one really to focus on the team because you're hitting 4 tanks. How do you actually get to the LeBlanc? She gets to go in and out between the tanks. And that's, I think, the comp they went for, but they didn't consider the fact that, well, if LeBlanc is the main carry of this 4 tanks in LeBlanc comp, and they have a counter to that, you can no longer rely on the LeBlanc to be the only carry now.
Now, that said, even though what we saw in this game was SK Telecom losing, I still believe that if you go to 45 minutes with SKT's comps, the advantage returns to them because Morgana becomes useless.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Right, okay, it's obvious this was a plan, Monty. So did EDG bait Faker onto this LeBlanc?
Yes,
like, did Faker tunnel on the LeBlanc when he shouldn't have? What could he have picked instead?
What could he have picked instead of the LeBlanc?
Yeah.
A Zir? I mean,
because the thing is, you have to remember, LeBlanc was picked second wave for SKT. So if he picks almost anything else there, now listen, they still have good champions. They pick up Maokai and Alistair first. Okay, those are meta things that people play.
But he's afraid because he knows. Here's the thing about what we were talking about with the Azir first pick. The thing about blind picking Azir is that you know that the Kassadin matchup is good, and you know Pawn likes playing Kassadin. So we didn't touch on that earlier when we were talking about why perhaps they picked the Lulu on blue side instead.
Lulu's all like
going for these
Kassadin destroys Lulu though, in my opinion. I think that's a way worse matchup.
Okay, fair enough. But the Lulu is able to push the wave in super early into the game, and the way that SK Telecom plays Lulu is for very early dragon control before Kassadin can do anything.
Okay. I still don't like it though. I just don't think it's really worth it. Like the dragons don't give you a big enough advantage, I think, to warrant that.
I'm theory crafting here as to why they wouldn't take the Azir. I still think the Azir is worth it because you can abuse Kassadin with his low amount of wave clear. You can always abuse him for that reason. I'm not a big fan of the Kassadin pick.
See, like if they had been trying this, like they banned LeBlanc, SKT banned it all games except for Game 5. And I guess they had a strat against it Game 5, but then EDG didn't take it, so they took it. But the confusing thing is, if they had this strat where they're going to leave LeBlanc up, you can't really wait until the last game to play it, because their strat wasn't, we're going to take LeBlanc and see what they do. Like, that's a learning strategy. That's what you want to do in like the first 4 games. So I really don't like the banning of LeBlanc. I feel like this is where they could have learned a lot more, because EDG was just picking all of EasyHoon's champions after game 1. That's really all that they wanted to do anymore. And I don't know. Sorry.
Okay.
This might have been off topic. I was just staring at it again.
On this show, we have someone who I happen to know is a huge fan of Pawn. He like worships this guy. You fucking bombed him at the end of this interview that we did. He thinks Pawn's the shit. True, Polly? You think Pawn's awesome, right?
I love Pawn's my homie.
Yeah, exactly. So you think Pawn's great. Now, what's interesting is, over the course of the tournament, he had some really great games, some really good games. Now, here's what you might find interesting, probably. That the people who are the Chinese experts that we know, Froscorian, Kelsey, they actually think that Pawn's overrated, because they think that people look at EDG and they say, like, Pawn's the carry or Pawn's the secondary carry, whereas the real carry of EDG is Deft. And then beyond that, they think that like Clearlove's the second best player. Let's not get into that part, okay? that is for another show, not for this show. This is a sanctuary, probably. This is a sacred place. Clearlove will not pass the threshold to this place. It would destroy him if he did. He's a dark force. Now, what do you actually think of Pawn over this tournament?
I don't know. My opinion hasn't really changed at all. Like, I do think AD carries most of the time can be bigger carries than the mid laner, mostly because they're fit with a babysitter in lane, and then normally you pick that babysitter to complement the AD carry in team fights. You normally don't pick a support to complement mid laner. So I think AD carries naturally should be able to carry more than mid. So if they think Deft is the big carry of EDG, they're probably right. Deft is, set up. He's in the role where he should be carrying harder than mid laner. I still think Pawn is really, really good. I'm not a big fan.
Nobody's saying that. He's still top.
I mean, I don't know. His performance was good, but it wasn't like, I don't know. I'm still.
Let me ask you this, Prolly. Who was a better mid laner in this tournament, Pawn or Faker?
I would say Pawn, just because Faker is selfish, I think. I think Faker's a bit too selfish. Like,
he also doesn't play with Deft, by the way. I'll just let you know that right up front. He also doesn't play with almost the best player in the tournament at every position, Pawn fucking lives the charmed life of the universe, Monty. I don't get it. Like, he leaves Samson White, so I'm like, finally, I get to see him on his own, doing shit, and then all of a sudden, this Koro guy goes up like 1.5 levels. Clearlove's like the best jungler in the tournament. Fucking Deft's the best player in the world at his position. And even the scrub rookie guy who's the support is having like the tournament of his life, or like a 3-month span or something. Like, wait, what? This guy's fucking... he did the ultra mega ritual where he actually like killed his own family or something in that satanic basement ritual. Like, I don't know what this guy did. I think Porn, here's what happens, okay? When Porn gets to the age of 27, he literally just drops dead, and they're like, that's strange, his body weighs a lot less. And what happens is his soul instantly gets disintegrated by the dark gods of chaos, because he offered his entire life just to be a god of League of Legends for like 2 years or some shit, you know? That's what happened to this guy.
Pawn is super good.
Yeah, if that happened, I wouldn't be surprised.
I think Pawn is an excellent player. But yes, it's true. He does have a lot of team advantages. But I still think Pawn, we can easily place him in top 5 probably in the world in his position.
Sure.
I do think Faker I think Faker has more carry potential. But I think that's because he's always been that part of the team where it's like there's someone slacking really hard and he had to pick it up. Yeah, Pawn, I guess, has been on a bit of a silver platter to where he can play Morgana mid, and that's as hard as he has to.
Like, here's the thing. Pawn can take his aggressive, ridiculous 1v1 trades where, like, he doesn't even know he's going to win, but if he does, he'll get the kill and snowball, because it's not game over if he loses. Like, if Faker just did that repeatedly and went like 2-5-1, odds are they never win that game. Whereas EDG's entire style, actually, is they have the 4 roughly more conservative players who want to get to a 25-minute to 30-minute team fight. Therefore, Pawn has the freedom to sometimes win games single-handedly early, and if he dies, it doesn't matter anyway. They can still potentially win anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but the one thing I was saying, like, Faker is more selfish because, like, Pawn in that matchup could have actually had a big CS lead. Like, that's a CS lead matchup for Morgana, especially early on. But the risk of dying was just too great, or losing lane pressure and letting Faker roam was too much to kind of give away. So he gave up some CS and just stayed like half pressuring mid lane.
Probably
the correct play.
It was smart though.
If you're Tony Stark, probably
he knows that if he dies and Faker gets a kill on LeBlanc, the game is fucking over.
So I like that. But see, if the shoes are swapped and it was Faker playing Morgana, I don't believe for 1 second he would play like that.
Probably.
Faker would level 1 flash ignite some bullshit.
If you are Tony Stark, you have to be selfish with your money, because you need to use that money for wonderful machines, which you'll then use to save the world. If you give all that money to charity, then you've got no money for machines and no one can save the world. And now, some little starving African who's had a lovely drink of milk and some toast, now he has to save the world. It's everyone's responsibility to save the world. Instead, as Tony Stark, the best thing you could do is not give
Bill
them...
Gates and Tony Stark. Faker is Tony Stark.
I want to know where this
because
child got a toaster to toast bread on.
Well, come on, man. He lives in Africa. That bread probably just instantly toasts the second you take it out of the container. Let's be real. I'm pretty sure you could like boil a fried egg on the side of that kid's head. Like, anyway, aside from that visual that I just created there, Pawn is not Bill Gates, because Bill Gates also gave all his money away. Pawn's the guy who has the luxury of doing whatever he wants. Pawn isn't unselfish. What the fuck are you guys talking about? He has an unselfish team, therefore he gets to be selfish, and it's not an issue ever. Dude, you know what, Monty? I'm gonna just fucking abuse all your illusions, my friend. Are you ready? Do you want to know why it's not that big a deal that EDG won this tournament? Because they were playing against fucking SKTS with Bengi for 3 of the 5 games. I don't give a fuck, bro. That SKTS almost became the best team in the world. That's what tells you what the Korean Exodus did. It wasn't Faker and SKTS. It was SKTS and fucking shitty Bengi. That's who almost won the biggest tournament in the world. That is the cost that the Korean Exodus had on this scene.
To be fair to SKTS, and look, I was the #1 SKTS hater, okay? But they did make top 4 in Champions last season in summer.
Yeah, and you remember how SKTS used to win games, Monty? They used to win by the lowest margin possible, going as late game as possible, grinding as much as possible, or they got ultra shit on super early in the game.
Dude, that sounds really...
Yeah, it sounds
amazing.
like SKT right now, doesn't it?
Style.
Sounds like SKT right now. Sounds like the opposite of everything Prolly believes and loves about the game. That's what SKT was. They are the antithesis of Prolly's love.
I mean, do you remember Cole?
Fuck Cole.
I do. Whoa!
Yeah, exactly. Here's what happened in this final, Monty. The 2 greatest coaches of all time met head to head. It was Koma, the legend from Korea who's won all his world champs, all the rest of it, but who had the best player of all time. Ignore that. And then you had Aaron. Admittedly, also had some of the best players of all time, but he's this other guy. Aaron fucking won this coaching battle, Monty. He outcoached the other guy. He had the right aspect for all the way through the tournament. This guy won. He put out that trap, and he literally went fucking Yu-Gi-Oh on Koma's ass. So anyway, as I was saying, what happened in this final was that Aaron went full Yu-Gi-Oh on Koma's ass. So Koma was like, you forgot one thing, my friend. And Aaron was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you've left LeBlanc up, my greatest champion. And so he locked that in. And as he locked it in, Aaron was like, had a look on her face, like he was aghast, like, no. And then the second it was locked in, it turned like he stopped. And suddenly a smile appeared on his face. He was like, you've just activated my trap card. And then he unfolded, because it was one of those cards that allowed him to bring like multiple other creatures into the realm. He was like, the anti-LeBlanc comp. What will your player do now? And then he just crushed him completely. He was like, game. And afterwards, Koma was like shaking his hand like, well played, man. And he was like, I win. Koma, I win. And then he just walked away. Yeah, that's how it ended. That was how this tournament was, Monty.
Have you considered getting into anime writing?
I might do it eventually when my career falls off enough. Here's the thing, Monty.
Won't be too long.
Koma is the greatest. Yeah.
I mean, you're already, on the ropes, but
yeah. Eventually, it depends. I reckon I'll be much like that guy who wrote all those Conan books. I'll probably do a streak of anime writing that's incredible, very lively, fantasy life before killing myself, probably around age 30. So, actually, I'm already 30. That doesn't even make sense. Maybe I go back in time and I set up Centaur and then I kill myself. I don't know what way it goes.
I actually think that your primary reason for staying alive is to piss people off. So as long as that keeps happening, I really don't see suicide in your future.
No, I need that salt to stay alive, Monty. Actually, that like my body produces an excess of water, and so I would actually die if I didn't consume salt on a massive amount on a daily basis. And so I try to get enough from foods, but I find that like tears are of incredibly high concentration. So like in Monsters Inc. when they used like children screaming as a power source, I actually need like the tears of fans to give me like sustenance in life. And what I found was North Americans have the most amount of salt in their diet, and so I try to get the most NA fans as I can to cry at any one time. I've been very successful. I'm actually quite vibrant now. I'm in good spirits. I'm in good health. I went through a rough patch at one point in time. They were happy.
See, I already preempted you on that. Weeks ago, I switched my Twitter profile to Demon Feasting on Fanboy tier. So I'm sorry, I'm already the demonic entity that is doing that. Okay. So you can't be that too.
Okay, I see how
Find
it is.
Find your own niche.
So, but here's the thing, Monty.
I hate you so much.
One of the problems in the debate over who the greatest coach of all time is that Koma was the greatest coach of all time, but he also had the best player of all time by far. Well, have you noticed, Del, when he doesn't insert that player, he won LCK. Congratulations, you did that, well done. And then you lost the MSI. Well done. You just blew it. After all those years of Korean domination, you've blown it. Let me ask you this, Monty. How much credit can we give China as a region? Because on one hand, they did have two of their best players were Korean players. You can't deny that. Secondly, they were playing SKTS for some of it. And thirdly, thirdly, I will say it does seem like this season, stuff like vision control went like through the roof in China compared to where it was before.
Sure. I also want to say to your SKTS point, we could have been saying last year during the same time period, it's like, it's just Samsung Blue. They've been shit last year, but they actually got good. So
jump off a cliff, mate. They had fucking Dade transfer to their team. They had Dade transfer to their team. Another all-time great player, yeah.
Well, they had Faker transfer to their team.
Yeah. It's almost like that's what I'm saying. It's made them really good. Are you fucking... Is this on? Ding, ding, ding. What's going on here? Yeah. Oh, Monty, did SKTS, who I'm saying are shit, only have the best player ever transferred to their team in his prime and become better? In that case, you are right. They must have been really good.
They also had Def to improve massively. So, anyway.
Okay. Okay.
So, coming into China... even though we saw some very close games in the playoffs in China, and perhaps EDG should have lost to LGD, I think that EDG's pick and bans were nowhere near as good throughout the LPL playoffs as they ended up being in MSI, especially in the MSI playoffs. I think they had a much better read on the Cinderhulk meta by the time MSI came around. I think they did a lot of prep during those 2 weeks. I think that if they had come in to MSI and Pawn was still unable to play both Azir and Cassiopeia, that there's probably no way they beat SKT in a best of 5. But the fact that he stepped up, had some new champions to play, they had some very well thought out specific strategies was good. But there's also no denying that EDG was convincingly the best team in China for nearly the entire, like pretty much the entire season. They had far and away the most wins during the regular season. They were pretty damn dominant. And I don't think we saw that same thing. There was a little more up and down in Korea. So I guess I'm hesitant to say, obviously EDG is a fantastic team. But I'm not sure the degree to which the depth goes in China, whereas I think CJ in
so that's what we'll find out at Worlds then, because the thing is, problem in Korea was they didn't have the obvious dominant team that was dominant in the regular season, then won the split and came here. They had one that became really good at the end of the season.
Right.
And the one that was really good fell off. Monty, you have to say it now. There's no way to hide behind it. Clearlove was the best jungler in this tournament, correct?
He was, absolutely. He played very well.
One of the best junglers in the world. Top 5 in the world.
I have to admit that as well.
Yeah.
Keep using the word best.
But see,
I can see him clench over there.
Duncan, I was never arguing against
Okay, it's getting serious now.
Performance
Shit's getting
this
real.
season.
Shit got real. Okay. That's the first time he's ever actually said that name, by the way, in my life.
Never arguing against Clearlove's performance this particular season.
Okay.
The only thing I was arguing against was him being in the top 20 players of all time.
I want to relate to you, Monty, just a little anecdote that I was told when I recorded Incoming Aggression with Froscoin. She told me that she was positioned so that during Game 5 of that final, she could see your face, right? And she was looking over to you every time a play happened, and you just had this look on your face, like she said that as EDG started to like overwhelmingly win the game, there was literally a point where you just sort of leaned back, like let your shoulders drop, and were just sort of like, like just a father who realized like, it's never going to be, son's never going to be president. He's never going to read it. You're just going to have to settle for what you've got now. That's all there is left in life. The better days are behind you. You had a look like that. You looked a bit defeated, Monty. Did you have this feeling? Was that the subjective feeling going on here at all?
Not really.
What about that video where it showed your expression when that 2v1 with Hooney happened in the top lane? What about that, Monty?
Really
that was just a dumb play, in my opinion. So
okay,
that was really good.
So EDG is the number 1 team in the world, right, Monty?
I think you have to put them there right now.
Here's the problem, though. I'm not convinced. I still think if SK Telecom if he's, Lord forbid, if a horrible tragedy happened and the EasyHoon's flight was overbooked and his plane crashed, I think SK Telecom could be the best team in the world.
Well, if his flight was overbooked and his plane crashed, he wouldn't have been on it. So
no, it was a way to separate him from his team, Monty. Do you not understand the example here? He got into I can't allow Faker to die, can I? Otherwise, then their team's done. So I have to have Faker live and EasyHoon die. You could go the other way if you want. In fact, if anything, Monty, I'd prefer that Faker got on the other flight and the other flight crashed and he got a whole brand new team built around him and get shitters like fucking Wolf and Bengi to fuck out of there. Get some good players in there.
And some good coaches.
Yeah, exactly. Get a good coach in there.
I'd play you, Faker. Every game.
See, there we go. He's already better than Coma. I'm gonna do my own video about this. In fact, it'll probably be out by the time this comes out. But I actually think Coma is ruining fucking esports history because we're now having the best player of all time is just not even playing all the games and not even winning championships, etc. He's sat on the bench while they win that. I can't think of any great sport in history where that happened. The great player plays all the finals games. That's what we judge them by, the great moments. And then this guy's just sat on the bench for half of them. That's just fucking shit. Meanwhile, you're here making fucking... You EasyHoon apologist. In my country, that would be a crime, like denying the Holocaust in Austria. Like, you would be imprisoned if you even stated those things about our Lord Faker. Anyway, I've got one last topic to talk about before we wrap this up. What we should probably mention AHQ before this ends. So we mentioned them a little bit before. So obviously Westdoor gets really hyped when he has a good game. What do you actually think of Westall overall? Like, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses? What do you think of it? Where is he overall fit into your list?
We always know what Westor's champions are. He's been playing these same champions for years, in and out of meta. I think that he as a player is pretty stuck in his ways, but he's good at those ways, so he makes it work a little bit. But I don't think that will ever operate at the top level of the competitive scene. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to take new champions and do well with them. So I think there's a ceiling to how good AHQ can get. I think AHQ was immensely benefited by the Cinderhulk changes, and to AHQ's credit, they played pretty well at this tournament. But you could see champion pool limitations with that team that didn't really exist with a lot of the other teams there.
Monty, is Westall a better mid laner than Kuro from GE Tigers? Paulie, I always know how to get the questions. I know how to put the right reference point there to really test his Korean bias. Okay, come on.
I think Kuro has much more flexibility, so I would rather have Kuro personally.
Okay, what do you think of Westall, Paulie? What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I don't know. I do value like flexibility and just like, I don't know, man. Like every mid laner ever who like refuses to follow the meta is just on a time limit. Yeah. They're eventually going to get phased out of the game and be completely terrible players, or they're going to be stuck at like, maybe middle of the pack in their region. Like it's really important for mid lane to like either counterpick the meta or learn something, but your play has to be based around the meta if you need to farm or if you need to be aggressive, and your picks need to follow it as well. And I just really don't like players like that are stuck like, these 4 champions, I'm really comfortable with them, I like them, and I'll only play those 4 champions. It's like, I don't know, I think you need to show you have some kind of range to your abilities.
Listen, I'm loving this theory. I agree. Like, all mid laners should do is look for the most recent OP shit that is totally abusive, abuse the fuck out of it, like take champions that just burst people 100 to 0, and never ever have to worry about like magic resist becoming too powerful in the game. Because I could imagine all Riot people, one of those gifs where it's like old men like laughing about something in some boardroom? That's like Riot's development balancing team, and then one of them's like, and then he said to me, what if we made stuff that was really OP against magic? And then he was like, like we'd ever do that. Fuck top laners and AD carries. And then all the mid laners, Riot balance devs, then leave the room and go back to making a great game. Yeah. Okay, probably. I'm with you.
Hey,
I'm with you.
I mean, they did take away DFG, but how that survived for so long blows my mind. That
you mean the weapon that the only reason you could see how bullshit it was is fucking Evelyn Jungler used to use it as well and just beat the shit out of people. Like, that's like a mid lane item, dude. Like,
dude, everyone bought it. Like, I even saw like an Orianna in competitive build at one time, and I was like, really? Like, Gragas used to build it mid, and like he wasn't even a 100 to 0 champ. He was like, you QR the entire team and they die. So it's like every champ would use it, and you couldn't out tank it. It was pretty fucking obnoxious. But I guess
so. Let me ask you a bold question, Prolly. Based on this tournament, do you actually think that AHQ is better than TSM?
No. I think they play better this tournament for sure.
Well, that's unarguable, isn't it?
Yeah, that's like, I'm not going to argue that.
If you asked me if there was going to be another international tournament in 2 weeks, I would still bet on TSM. I would bet on TSM from learning from this experience, because like we were saying earlier in the show, it was a whole systemic breakdown, right? I wouldn't put money that a massive breakdown like that is going to happen again to TSM.
This is like, I don't know. This is like, the CLG abusive relationship. This is fucking TSM abusive relationship. I'm sitting there, I'm like, they're not going to lose again. He would never lose like that to me again. Next week he won't lose, don't worry. Like, I'm always I really hope TSM does well. I can't help that.
I still think in top jungle and AD that TSM has players that are not good enough to compete at an elite level on the international stage. I believe that, but I think they can take out AHQ.
Where would you put AHQ in the world, Monty? Whereabouts should they be?
I don't know. They had a decent showing here up until the semis where they got absolutely bodied by EDG. But they fought back, I don't know, somewhere between 11 and 15. I don't know. I'd have to reevaluate the list at this point after MSI. But
I would like to see Fnatic versus EDG. Like, I wonder if that would go to 4 or 5 games. That's what would make me curious. You think it'd go to 5 games?
4.
I think EDG would have won it more convincingly.
Yeah.
What if... Okay, I gave TSM versus AHQ. What about TSM versus Fnatic? Is Fnatic actually a legitimately better team? Are they overall better than TSM, Monty?
I think that going back to what I was saying about the Impulse games and how I thought Impulse could win, I think that Fnatic, with the strength of Huni, would do very well again.
So basically, if Rek'Sai had just been what Rush had picked instead of Sejuani, we might be having different conversations.
Or Nunu with his max snowball, flash snowball garbage. I don't know what Rush was doing in that series.
What do you think, Prolly? Fnatic better than TSM?
I think Fnatic is just like, I think that matchup is just super Fnatic one-sided. I wouldn't say that Fnatic is just a better team flat out. I would say they would probably have a pretty even record going against other teams in the world. But matching up head-to-head, I think Fnatic would, just be way stronger than that.
I think you have to say to a degree that Fnatic overperformed a bit this tournament. Like, they were awesome.
You have to. Great. You absolutely have to.
But I wouldn't put my money on this to happen next time.
Like, if you guys ever use the EU LCS finals as a bearing for your judgment, I'll punch you in the face.
I never would do that.
Put any team against UOL, and that team will play bad. Guaranteed. Unless they can get like an early lead from laning phase or something. If the game is even and it goes like 15 minutes, dumb shit is just going to happen. It's like solo queue. Like, Faker plays solo queue, and he does all this like sit in bot lane, do some dumb shit. Like, it just sucks you into this kind of play style that doesn't make any sense. And the whole strategy against UOL is to not play their style, and you'll do fine. But Fnatic kind of just like, got consumed in it and played their style. And
well, I'm also using the fact that their planning was much better this time around. And what am I supposed to use? Their garbage Smite Lee Sin strategy that they used against you? I think clearly we can say in a best of 5 that Fnatic performed better than we've ever seen them before.
Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty simple.
And a best of, because they've only done the best of 5 against us, and they played that Lee Sin shit, which is despicable that they won a game with that. And then the next one was UOL, so I guess they don't have a good track record of best of 5s to really judge.
So I think we can safely say they overperformed in this series. From
playing them all LCS, and then playing them in best of 5s, and then playing them in scrims, I would say this was what they should have done. Kind of like how you look at Rocat, and Rocat plays really well in scrims and they don't do it LCS. That could have been a Fnatic thing. It's like Fnatic plays that way in LCS, and they played it in these best of 5s, which is good.
It's also the factor of that they play their style well. Like, they know what their style is. It's defined. They're going to play that way. Whereas one of the hard things about judging TSM is that seems to be one of the failures they had here, not even knowing their playing style and then putting Bjergsen on these champions every single game, not even giving him one game off. So it feels like they didn't even make use of the tools they did have to go forwards.
Fnatic actually had that same problem too. Earlier in the season, they kept playing this like double AD comp, and it was that's not a comp you would play with Fnatic. You would never think of like, this is where we need to put a tank top and then like Forbidden on Ezreal. And they did that like, I think 3 or 4 games in regular season. And I was really confused with why they were trying to change like their style of the game, like to something that's not them at all. That's like not their play style. So I'm glad they gave that up and they didn't like, get hard headed and be like, oh, we need to be this super immersive team that can play all styles. They're just like, we have this kind of style where we fight a lot. Let's keep doing that.
Oh, by the way, before we end, Monty, how fucking awesome was it seeing Faker play mid Ezreal again, where it means that basically you can't even 1v1 in lanes, because like if in the top lane you're fighting, then you just get like the ultimate fired on you as well.
Speaking of the mid Ezreal,
as you're fighting,
what another great strategy to use in the finals against EDG. It's a champion that wins nearly every lane due to strong poke and strong control, and it's a champion like Ziggs that you can use to protect your other lanes if tower dives occur. Where the fuck did this go? And the best part is you can even early pick the Ezreal and just send it to AD carry, because we know Bang's a great Ezreal player as well. And guess what? Ezreal's also a safe pick against the crazy chaos style because he has 2 flashes on him.
I think Monty should have a series where he rants. It's just called Guess What? And he rhetorically asks you to guess what while then berating you about something that you never got a chance to guess what. And guess what? And another thing. Guess what? Yeah, okay. So let's just do a few. Fuck it. We'll just end on that note. Like, we could have asked probably loads of stuff about H2K, but we've already done like fucking a billion hours about MSI. So we'll have to have you on a future episode to talk. Well, what we'll do is, at the moment you're riding a high, I prefer to have people on when there's like a moment of weakness, so I can then berate them about how everyone in their team is shit. So we'll just end on this note, probably. It's the end.
Bring it on. We'll fight. I'll 1v2 you guys again. I ain't scared.